What if Harry discovered Muggle technology could destroy Horcruxes and built a machine at age 14? Chapter 1, The Accidental Discovery. Harry Potter slumped against the stone wall of the Ollery, clutching the Walkman in his trembling hands. The November air bit through his jumper, but he barely noticed. His name coming out of the Goblet of Fire last night had effectively turned the entire school against him. Even Ron thought he'd cheated his way into the Triwizard Tournament. Stupid tournament. Stupid goblet, Harry muttered, fiddling with the Walkman's buttons. The device wasn't actually a Walkman anymore, not really. After spending the summer locked away at Privet Drive, he'd salvaged it from Dudley's most recent pile of discarded electronics and tinkered with it extensively. He popped open the cassette compartment where he'd replaced the standard components with a small microphone and transmitter setup. The back panel housed a collection of batteries that should have been too many for the device to hold, a bit of expanding charm work he'd secretly practiced after seeing Mr. Weasley's enchanted Ford Anglia. "Come on, work already," Harry whispered, pressing the modified play and record buttons simultaneously in the pattern Sirius had specified in his last letter. The headphones crackled with static before Sirius's voice came through, distant but unmistakable. "Harry? Are you there?" "I'm here," Harry replied, his voice echoing slightly in the empty Ollery. "It worked." "Of course it worked," Sirius said, and Harry could practically hear the smirk. "Your dad and I used to modify Muggle walkie-talkies back at Hogwarts. This is just the next generation." "Did my dad know a lot about Muggle tech?" Harry asked, suddenly hungry for any detail about James Potter. "Enough to impress your mother," Sirius chuckled. "Lily was the real genius with it, though. Said wizard communication methods were needlessly complicated." Harry smiled at the mention of his parents, but it faded quickly. "Sirius, I didn't put my name in that goblet." "I believe you," his godfather said without hesitation. "Which means someone else did, and that's far more concerning." "Everyone thinks I'm a cheat," Harry said, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "Even Ron. Give him time. Meanwhile, keep that device close and hidden. We'll use it to stay in contact." Harry nodded, then remembered Sirius couldn't see him. "Right. I'd better go before someone finds me up here." After promising to check in regularly, Harry disconnected and tucked the modified Walkman into an inside pocket of his robes. As he descended the stairs, he pulled out the Marauder's map to check for anyone who might corner him for unwanted questions about the tournament. "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good," he whispered, tapping the parchment with his wand. The moment the map began revealing itself, the Walkman in his pocket vibrated violently. Harry froze, then quickly pulled it out. The small LCD display he'd salvaged from a broken calculator was lighting up with strange patterns he'd never programmed. "What the?" The display flickered between numbers and strange symbols before settling on what looked like a simplified directional arrow. Harry looked down at the map, then back at the device. Experimentally, he moved the Walkman closer to the parchment. The vibration intensified, and the arrow spun wildly before pointing directly at the map. Harry's eyebrows shot up as he noticed something odd about the ink lines forming Hogwarts on the parchment. They seemed to shimmer slightly, pulsing with an energy he'd never noticed before. "It's detecting the map's magic," he whispered to himself, eyes widening. Harry spent the next few minutes moving the Walkman around the map, watching as the arrow consistently tracked the magical signatures. When he hovered over moving dots representing people, the device reacted differently than when it passed over the magical architecture. Different kinds of magic make different readings, he realized, his mind racing with possibilities. A noise from the stairwell sent Harry scrambling to hide both items. "Mischief managed," he whispered hurriedly, tapping the map just as Professor Moody's distinctive uneven gait became audible. "Potter," Moody growled, his magical eye swiveling in its socket. "Lurking in stairwells now, are we?" "Just heading back to the common room, sir," Harry said, trying to keep his voice casual despite the Walkman still vibrating faintly against his chest. Moody's magical eye seemed to fix on Harry's pocket for an unsettling moment. "Best hurry along then. Constant vigilance," Potter. Not everyone's pleased about your tournament entry. I didn't enter myself, Harry said automatically. Precisely why you should be vigilant, Moody replied, clomping past him down the stairs. Dumbledore wants to see me about security measures. Never know what dark artifacts might be hiding in plain sight these days. Harry waited until Moody was gone before releasing a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The Walkman had finally stopped vibrating, but the encounter left him uneasy. He hurried toward Gryffindor Tower, his mind churning with questions about what his modified device had detected and why Moody's eye had seemed so interested in his pocket. You're telling me your Muggle music player can detect magic? Hermione whispered incredulously. They sat in a far corner of the library, textbooks spread out as cover for their actual conversation. Harry nodded, keeping his voice low. Not just detect it, it seems to distinguish between different types. Look. He surreptitiously pulled out the device and slid it across the table. Hermione examined it skeptically. Harry, this is impossible. Muggle electronics don't work around magic. They short out from the interference. That's what everyone says, but it's not exactly true, Harry countered. The Dursleys visited a wizarding village once when I was 9, Dudley insisted on bringing his Game Boy. It worked fine until we went into this shop full of enchanted objects. That's when it fried. Hermione's eyes narrowed in thought. So it's not magic itself, but the concentration and type that causes problems. Exactly. And I think the modifications I made accidentally created some kind of magic detector. Hermione looked from the device to Harry with newfound interest. What exactly did you do to it? Harry explained the various changes he'd made over the summer, the expanded battery compartment, the transmitter modifications, the spell he'd used to boost the signal. That's actually quite brilliant, Hermione admitted. The combination of the extended power source and that particular charm might have created a resonance effect with magical energy. Harry grinned, relieved that Hermione was taking him seriously. There's more. Last night, I heard Moody talking to Dumbledore outside his office. They didn't see me, I was under the invisibility cloak. Hermione's expression shifted immediately to disapproval. Harry, I know, but listen. They were talking about you-know-who. Dumbledore said something about the methods Tom used to ensure survival, and how they needed to be understood before they could be countered. Hermione's eyes widened. And Moody, he said something weird. He said, split 7 ways, the soul becomes unstable. Then Dumbledore shushed him and they went inside the office. Hermione went very still. Split soul. That sounds like. Her voice trailed off as she glanced around the library. We need to research this. If you-know-who found a way to split his soul to survive, that could explain how he didn't truly die when his killing curse rebounded off you. Harry nodded, then pulled out the Walkman again. And get this, when they were talking, this thing went crazy. It was vibrating in my pocket, and when I checked it later, the display was showing these weird symbols. Hermione's academic curiosity was fully engaged now. We need to test this systematically. And we need to find out what soul-splitting magic might be. Harry smiled for what felt like the first time since his name had come out of the goblet. This was something concrete he could focus on, a mystery to solve that might actually help him prepare for whatever was coming. Where do we start? He asked. Hermione was already gathering her books. The restricted section, obviously. And Harry. She paused, her expression softening. I'm glad you're focusing on something productive instead of just worrying about the tournament. Harry shrugged. Well, if someone's trying to kill me through this tournament, might as well try to understand why. 3 days later, Harry found himself alone in an empty classroom, the Walkman disassembled on a desk before him. Hermione's research had turned up frustratingly little concrete information. The restricted section books mentioned soul magic only in passing, often with warnings rather than explanations. The most useful text, Magic Most Evile, had merely referenced something called a Horcrux as being too evil to describe. The word had burned itself into Harry's mind. Horcrux. Was that what Dumbledore and Moody had been discussing? Without access to more information, Harry had turned his attention to improving his accidental detector. Using the basic electronic components he had available and a few owl-ordered parts paid for with some of his Gringotts gold, he'd been modifying the circuitry based on when and how the device had previously reacted to magic. Just a little more solder here, he muttered to himself, carefully connecting a wire to what had once been part of Colin Creevy's broken camera. The tiny magical component detected light patterns invisible to the naked eye. Harry hoped it might help differentiate magical signatures. The classroom door creaked open, and Harry nearly dropped the soldering tool he'd transfigured from a quill. "Oh. Sorry, I didn't know anyone was in here," said a dreamy voice. Luna Lovegood stood in the doorway, her radish earrings swinging gently as she tilted her head to examine Harry's project with open curiosity. "That's a curious contraption," she said, walking over without waiting for an invitation. "Are you building a Raxpert detector?" "Daddy's been trying to perfect one for years." Harry hesitated, unsure how to respond. Luna's reputation for oddness made her an unlikely confidant, but also meant few people took her seriously. Maybe that was an advantage. "Not exactly," he said slowly. "I'm trying to detect different types of magic." Luna's protuberant eyes widened with interest. "Oh. Like the difference between charms and transfigurations?" "More like, dark magic versus regular magic," Harry explained, surprised at his own willingness to share. Luna nodded solemnly. "That makes sense. Different magical intentions leave different resonance patterns in the ambient energy field." Harry stared at her. "In the what?" "The ambient energy field," Luna repeated, as if it were common knowledge. "Magic doesn't just disappear after a spell is cast. It ripples outward, like dropping a stone in a pond. The ripples eventually fade, but some magical signatures persist longer than others." Harry set down his tools, giving Luna his full attention. "And dark magic? How does that ripple differently?" Luna's expression grew uncharacteristically serious. "Dark magic tears at the fabric of natural order. Especially magic that damages souls. Those leave wounds in the energy field that never fully heal. Daddy says that's why certain places feel haunted or wrong even centuries after dark magic was performed there." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "Luna, what do you know about something called a Horcrux?" Luna's eyes widened slightly. "That's very dark magic, Harry Potter. The darkest. It involves splitting one's soul and hiding a fragment in an object." She tilted her head. "Why do you ask? How do you know about them?" "We couldn't find anything in the library." Luna smiled vaguely. "Daddy published an article on magical archaeological sites in Albania last year. One site showed evidence of Horcrux creation. The ministry tried to suppress the article, but Daddy included it anyway, coded into a feature about crumplehorn snorkack migration patterns." Harry wasn't sure whether to laugh or take her seriously, but the information matched what little they'd pieced together. "So a Horcrux is part of someone's soul hidden in an object. And as long as that object exists, the person can't truly die," Luna finished. "Their body might be destroyed, but their soul remains tethered to this plane. It's horribly painful, existing without a body. More terrible than most can imagine." Harry's mind raced. This explained everything about Voldemort's survival. If he'd created a Horcrux, or possibly more, given Moody's split 7 ways comment, then the rebounded killing curse had merely destroyed his body, not his soul. "Luna, this is really important. Would my device be able to detect a Horcrux if it can sense dark magic?" Luna studied the disassembled components thoughtfully. "Perhaps. Horcruxes pulse with a distinctive magical signature. They're alive in a way most magical objects aren't." She pointed to a particular circuit. "This component is responding to magical frequency. If you calibrate it to detect the specific resonance of living magic within inanimate objects, you might find what you're looking for. Harry gaped at her. How do you know about electronic components? Luna smiled serenely. Daddy believes in understanding Muggle technology. We have a television that runs on dirigible plum juice and modified ley line energy. Before Harry could respond, Luna turned toward the door. The Nargles suggest I should leave you to your work now. But Harry? Her voice lost its dreamy quality for a moment. Be careful. Things that detect darkness can attract it too. With that cryptic warning, she drifted out of the classroom, leaving Harry staring after her with a mixture of confusion and newfound determination. The first Hogsmeade weekend of the term found Harry hidden under his invisibility cloak, slipping into the basement of Dervish and Banjas while the proprietor dealt with a rowdy group of sixth years upstairs. This is absolutely against at least a dozen school rules, Hermione hissed from beside him, also concealed under the cloak. Which is why you should have waited outside as lookout like we planned, Harry whispered back, scanning the shelves of magical repair components. And let you potentially blow yourself up. No thank you. Harry suppressed a grin. Despite her protests, Hermione had become fully invested in their secret project over the past weeks. Ron was still barely speaking to him, but Harry found himself too busy with tournament preparation and his detector work to dwell on it much. There, Hermione pointed to a high shelf. Thaumic resonators. They're used in dark detectors and secrecy sensors. Harry stretched up to grab the small box. Perfect. Now we just need some essence of magical containment to calibrate it. They found the specialized oil in a dusty corner and were about to leave when the basement door opened. They froze as Professor Moody's distinctive silhouette appeared in the doorway. Interesting place for students to be lurking, he growled, his magical eye swiveling in its socket. Even invisible ones. Harry and Hermione remained perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. I can see you, Potter. You and Granger both. Might as well show yourselves. Reluctantly, Harry pulled off the cloak. Sorry, Professor. We were just looking for components for that little project you've been working on, Moody finished for him. The one you've been hiding in the unused charms classroom on the 4th floor. Harry felt his stomach drop. How did you, magical eye, boy, Moody tapped beside his magical eye. Sees through walls, doors, and invisibility cloaks. Hermione clutched the components tightly. Professor, we can explain, no need, Granger. I've been watching Potter's little invention with great interest. Moody's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. Clever work, combining Muggle technology with magical detection principles. Your mother had a similar knack, Potter. Harry blinked in surprise. You knew my mother? Knew of her, Moody corrected. Lily Potter's charm work during the war was innovative. Created detection systems the Death Eaters never anticipated. He stepped closer, examining the components in Hermione's hands. But what exactly are you trying to detect with these particular components? Harry hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Moody had been talking to Dumbledore about Horcruxes, but that didn't mean Harry was supposed to know about them. Dark magic, he said finally. After what happened at the World Cup and now with the tournament. I thought having a way to detect dark magic might be useful. Moody studied him intently, his magical eye eerily still for once. Constant vigilance, he said approvingly. Though I suspect you're after something more specific than general dark magic. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial containing what looked like black smoke. Essence of dark residue. Collected from artifacts after the last war. Might help calibrate your little detector more accurately than that diluted commercial stuff. Harry stared at the vial, then at Moody. Why are you helping us? Because Dumbledore trusts you, and I trust Dumbledore, Moody said gruffly. And because anything that helps identify dark magic is something I approve of on principle. Now take it and get back to the castle before you're caught by someone less understanding. As Moody clumped back up the stairs, Hermione turned to Harry with wide eyes. "Did that seem odd to you?" she whispered. Harry nodded slowly, examining the vial of dark essence. "Yeah, but it's Moody, everything about him is odd. And this could save us weeks of calibration work." Hermione bit her lip. "I suppose. Just, be careful with it." "Always am," Harry replied, carefully pocketing the vial as they slipped back under the invisibility cloak. 2 nights before the first Triwizard task, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed with the curtains drawn and silencing charms in place. The rebuilt Walkman, now barely recognizable under the additions and modifications, glowed with a soft blue light from its enhanced display. Harry had spent every free moment between dragon preparation and classes working on the detector. Moody's dark essence had proven invaluable for calibration, allowing Harry to fine-tune the sensors to react specifically to powerful dark magic. "Okay," he whispered to himself. "Final test." He reached under his pillow and pulled out the Marauder's map. The device had originally reacted to the map's magic, so it seemed a good benchmark for testing sensitivity. Harry activated the map with a whispered oath and watched the device's readings. The display showed a moderate reaction, exactly as he'd hoped. Standard magical items registered, but didn't overload the sensors. Next, Harry pulled out a small box containing a dead spider from one of Moody's defense lessons. The spider had been killed with the Avada Kedavra curse during their lesson on Unforgivables. Harry had secretly pocketed it afterward, reasoning that it might retain traces of the dark curse. The detector's reading spiked notably higher than with the map, the display shifting from blue to amber. Harry nodded in satisfaction. The device was differentiating between ordinary magic and dark magic. Finally, with a deep breath, Harry reached into his pocket and removed a carefully wrapped handkerchief. Inside was a single drop of Moody's dark essence, which Harry had preserved on a small glass slide. This was the most concentrated dark magic he had access to. The moment he unwrapped it, the detector went wild. The display flashed red, numbers spinning rapidly as it registered intense dark magical energy. The device vibrated so violently that Harry nearly dropped it. "Blimey," he whispered, quickly rewrapping the essence. The readings gradually returned to normal, the display fading back to blue. Harry sat in silence for a moment, processing what he'd learned. The device worked. It could detect and measure dark magic with remarkable sensitivity. But would it help him find what he suspected were Voldemort's Horcruxes? There was one more test, one he'd been avoiding. Slowly, Harry moved the detector toward his own forehead, positioning it near his lightning scar. For years, his scar had pained him when Voldemort was near or feeling particularly strong emotions. If there was some connection between them. The detector hesitated between blue and amber for a moment, then began pulsing with an erratic pattern, different from any previous reading. Not as intense as the dark essence, but definitely not normal magic either. Harry pulled the device away, his heart pounding. There was something dark about his scar, something the detector recognized as similar to, yet distinct from, the other dark magic it had sensed. A terrible suspicion began forming in his mind, one too horrifying to fully contemplate. If Voldemort had split his soul, and if Harry's scar connected him somehow to Voldemort. He shook his head, pushing the thought away. One step at a time. The detector worked. After the first task, he'd focus on refining it further and finding a way to not just detect, but neutralize dark magic. If Voldemort had created Horcruxes, Harry needed a way to destroy them. The prospect gave him a strange sense of control. For once, he wasn't just reacting to threats, he was actively developing a means to fight back. Whatever came after the first task, Harry would be ready with a weapon of his own making. He carefully packed away the detector and his test materials, then lay back on his bed, mind racing with possibilities. Tomorrow he would face a dragon, but beyond that loomed an even greater challenge, and perhaps, with his new invention, a path to victory. The common room erupted in cheers as Harry entered, the golden egg tucked under his arm. Surviving the Hungarian Horntail had transformed him from pariah to hero in the eyes of his fellow Gryffindors. Even Ron had finally come around, their friendship tentatively repaired. Speech, someone shouted, and Harry found himself hoisted onto a table. Thanks everyone, he managed, uncomfortable with the attention but relieved to be accepted again. Couldn't have done it without help though. His eyes found Hermione in the crowd, and he gave her a meaningful look. While the summoning charm had been crucial for the task, his success had also been bolstered by confidence from his progress on the detector project. Having something to focus on beyond the tournament had kept him centered. Hours later, when the party finally wound down, Hermione cornered Harry near the staircase to the boys' dormitory. "I think I found something," she whispered urgently. "About destroying them." Harry immediately knew what she meant. While he'd focused on detection, Hermione had continued researching Horcruxes, piecing together scattered references from various obscure texts. Where? When? International Magical Law section, Hermione said with a triumphant gleam in her eyes. There was a case in 1782 involving banned magical artifacts. The description matches what we think a Horcrux would be, and the court records noted that the artifact was cleansed of its inhabitant, using a combination of magical and alchemical processes. Harry's pulse quickened. Does it say what processes? Not specifically, but it mentions exposure to purified elemental energy sufficient to destabilize the soul fragment's magical container without triggering protective enchantments. Elemental energy, Harry repeated thoughtfully. Like fire or lightning? Hermione nodded excitedly. That's what I thought too. Especially lightning, it's both natural and contains massive energy. And Harry, Muggles have been harnessing electrical energy for over a century. Harry's eyes widened as he caught her meaning. So a Muggle device generating the right kind of electrical pulse might be able to destroy a Horcrux without triggering magical protections designed to counter magical attacks. Exactly. Magical defenses wouldn't recognize electricity as a threat until it was too late. A plan began forming in Harry's mind. I need to modify the detector. Not just to find Horcruxes, but to destroy them too. Hermione bit her lip. That's going to be much more complicated. And dangerous. We'd need components that can handle massive power surges. Then that's what we'll get, Harry said, determination hardening his voice. I almost died today fighting that dragon. If Voldemort comes back fully, many more people will die. We need every advantage we can get. As they parted for the night, Harry felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He'd conquered the first task of the Triwizard Tournament, but the work that really mattered was just beginning. Somewhere out there were fragments of Voldemort's soul, keeping the Dark Wizard tethered to life. Harry's accidental discovery might be the key to destroying them, and with them, Voldemort himself. Harry climbed into bed but left the curtains open, staring up at the ceiling as his dormmates snored around him. For years, he'd been reacting to Voldemort's moves, always on the defensive. Now, for the first time, he had the chance to strike first. All he needed was to perfect his machine and find the Horcruxes. Simple, right? Harry smiled grimly in the darkness. The golden eggs puzzle could wait. He had a Horcrux hunter to build. Chapter 2, Building the Impossible. Harry stared at the smoldering remains of what had been his third prototype. Smoke curled from the blackened circuit board, filling the abandoned classroom with the acrid smell of burnt plastic and magical residue. A week had passed since the first task, and progress on the Horcrux detector had hit a frustrating wall. Well, that's thoroughly dead, Ron observed, unhelpfully poking at the device with his wand. No kidding, Harry sighed, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. The magical amplifier overloaded again. Can't get the balance right between the electrical components and magical catalysts. Hermione looked up from the thick tome on her lap, a rare book on magical theory she'd convinced Professor Flitwick to lend her. That's because you're trying to force them to work together instead of finding natural harmony between the systems. Harry squinted at her. What does that even mean? It means, Hermione said, marking her place and coming over to the workbench, that magic and electricity aren't natural enemies like everyone thinks. They're more like, incompatible languages. We need a translator. Ron perched on a nearby desk, swinging his legs. Translation charm, maybe? Like the ones they use at international magical conferences. Harry and Hermione both turned to stare at him. What? Ron said defensively. Dad talks about them all the time. Ministry uses them whenever foreign wizards visit. Ron, that's brilliant. Hermione exclaimed. Don't sound so surprised, he muttered, though he looked pleased. Harry was already scribbling notes. After the first task, Ron had finally pulled his head out of his arse and apologized. When Harry had tentatively shown him the detector project, expecting skepticism, Ron had surprised them both by offering practical suggestions that neither Harry nor Hermione had considered. So we adapt a translation charm to convert electrical signals into magical ones and vice versa, Harry said, excitement building. That could solve the interference problem. And stabilize the amplification circuit, Hermione added. Ron stood and moved closer, pointing to the burnt circuit board. You could use one of those metal thingies as the anchor for the charm. The, resistors? Capacitors, Harry corrected automatically. And yeah, that might work. We'd need a specialized variation though. Harry pulled a fresh sheet of parchment toward him and began sketching a new design. After years of repairing Dudley's discarded electronics and months of intensive work on the detector, he developed a surprisingly comprehensive understanding of both circuit design and charm integration. As Harry worked, Hermione returned to her book while Ron wandered to the window, keeping an eye out for anyone approaching their secret workshop. Still nothing on actually destroying Horcruxes though, Harry said without looking up from his sketch. Detection is getting more reliable, but destruction's the real problem. About that, Hermione said, turning a page in her massive book. I think we need basilisk venom. Harry's pencil froze midline. Basilisk venom? According to this text, Horcruxes can only be destroyed when damaged beyond magical repair. Basilisk venom is one of the few substances that qualifies. Brilliant, let's just pop down to the apothecary and ask for a vial of ultra-rare deadly poison, Ron said sarcastically. I'm sure they stock it right next to the flobberworm mucus. Harry tapped his pencil against the table, thinking. We don't need to buy it. There's a massive dead basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. Has been for 2 years. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. You think it still has venom? After all this time? Basilisk venom remains potent for centuries, Hermione said. The challenge would be extracting it safely. Harry nodded slowly, a plan forming. We'd need specialized equipment. And we'd need to integrate the venom into the device somehow, use the electrical charge to deliver it precisely. Sounds horrifically dangerous, Ron noted. Better than the alternative, Harry replied grimly. If Voldemort returns with his Horcruxes intact, we're all dead anyway. The casual mention of Voldemort's name made Ron wince, but he didn't object. Progress, Harry thought. Before we start handling deadly venom, Hermione interjected, shouldn't we perfect the detection aspect? No point in having a destruction mechanism if we can't find the Horcruxes in the first place. Harry nodded, returning to his circuit diagram. You're right. Translation charm first, then we worry about the venom delivery system. As they worked through the evening, Harry felt a strange sense of purpose he'd rarely experienced before. The Triwizard Tournament, the Golden Eggs clue, even his growing anxiety about Voldemort's potential return, all seemed secondary to the challenge of building this impossible device. For once, he wasn't just reacting to events or following Dumbledore's cryptic guidance. He was creating something new, something that might change everything. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Mr. Potter, a moment please. Harry turned at the sound of Professor McGonagall's voice, halfway out of her Transfiguration classroom. Ron and Hermione paused beside him. You two go ahead, Harry told them. I'll catch up. Once they'd left, McGonagall fixed Harry with her characteristic stern gaze. I've noticed you've been absent from the Great Hall during several meals recently, and Professor Flitwick mentions you've been distracted in charms. Harry shifted uncomfortably. Between tournament preparation and the detector project, he had been skipping meals and struggling to focus in classes. Sorry, Professor. Just stressed about the tournament, I guess. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. While I appreciate your dedication to the tournament, your education must not suffer. Professor Moody has also mentioned your extracurricular project. Harry's stomach dropped. Professor Moody told you about that? He mentioned you were working on some sort of magical detection device, McGonagall said. He seemed quite impressed, actually. Oh. Right, Harry said, relief washing over him. Moody hadn't revealed the true purpose of the detector. Your mother was similarly innovative, McGonagall continued, surprising Harry with the personal observation. Lily had a remarkable talent for combining different branches of magic in unexpected ways. She paused, studying him. However, she also knew when to seek guidance from professors when attempting advanced magical experimentation. Harry recognized the implicit offer. Thank you, Professor. I'll keep that in mind. McGonagall nodded, apparently satisfied. The second task is still months away, Potter. Pace yourself. As Harry left the classroom, his mind was already racing with new possibilities. McGonagall's comment about his mother combining different magical branches had sparked an idea. What if the problem wasn't just translating between magic and technology, but integrating multiple types of magic? He quickened his pace toward the abandoned classroom they'd converted into their workshop, eager to share his new insight with Ron and Hermione. Careful with that. Hermione hissed as Ron levitated a large crystal into position above the partially assembled detector. I am being careful, Ron muttered, his wand hand steady despite his nervous expression. This thing cost more than my house. Harry couldn't argue with that assessment. The perfect quartz crystal had cost nearly all the money he'd brought to Hogwarts for the year. Thankfully, being a Triwizard champion meant he didn't need to buy new Hogsmeade outfits or Christmas presents to maintain appearances. Just a bit more to the left, Harry directed, watching as the crystal slowly aligned with the copper coils beneath it. There. Perfect. Ron lowered the crystal carefully into its mounting bracket. The three of them held their breath as it settled into place with a soft click. Phase 1 complete, Harry said, allowing himself a small smile. Now for the hard part. The hard part involved simultaneously casting 4 different charms on the crystal while maintaining the precise electrical current flowing through the copper coils. After 3 weeks of research and preparation, they were ready to attempt the core component of the improved detector. Ready? Harry asked, looking at his friends. Hermione nodded, her expression intense with concentration. Ron looked less confident but gave a determined nod. On 3, Harry said, positioning his wand. 1, 2, 3. Harry cast the modified translation charm they developed, while Hermione simultaneously performed a complex stabilizing spell. Ron, meanwhile, maintained the electrical flow with a carefully controlled energizing charm. The crystal began to glow, first with a soft blue light that gradually intensified. The copper coils beneath it hummed with energy, creating a resonance that made the air itself seem to vibrate. It's working, Hermione whispered, not daring to break her concentration. For several long seconds, the crystal pulsed with increasing brightness, the magic and electricity flowing together in perfect harmony. Then everything went spectacularly wrong. The crystal suddenly flared blindingly bright, and the detector emitted a high-pitched whine. Before any of them could react, a shock wave of magical energy burst outward, knocking all 3 of them off their feet. The windows of the classroom shattered, and several nearby desks splintered. Harry's ears rang as he pushed himself up from the floor, blinking away spots from his vision. Through the haze, he saw the detector still intact on the workbench, but the crystal had turned an ominous black color. "Everyone okay?" he called out, his voice sounding distant in his ringing ears. Hermione sat up from behind a fallen bookcase, her hair even wilder than usual but appearing unhurt. "I think so. Ron." A groan from the other side of the room answered her. Ron emerged from behind an overturned desk, his face smudged with soot but otherwise unharmed. "Bloody hell," he muttered. "What happened?" Before either Harry or Hermione could answer, the classroom door burst open. Professor Moody stood in the doorway, wand drawn, his magical eye spinning wildly. "Should have known," he growled, surveying the destruction. "Experimental magic gone awry." His eye fixed on the blackened crystal. "Impressive power surge, Potter." "Felt it 2 floors down." Harry scrambled to his feet. "Professor, we were just, save it," Moody interrupted, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. "Lucky I was nearby and not someone else." He approached the workbench, examining the damage detector. "Integration failure." "The crystal couldn't handle the magical electrical conversion," Hermione explained, brushing debris from her robes. "The resonance pattern became unstable." Moody nodded as if this was exactly what he'd expected. "You need a buffer between the systems." Direct integration was ambitious but premature. He reached into his robes and pulled out a small leather pouch. "Been meaning to give you this for your project. Seems the timing is appropriate." Harry accepted the pouch cautiously. Inside was a small vial of silvery liquid and what appeared to be a miniature silver tuning fork. "Mercury purified by goblin methods," Moody explained, pointing to the vial. "And a resonance fork attuned to dark magic frequencies. Used them for dark artifact detection in my Auror days." Harry stared at the items, then at Moody. "Why are you helping us with this?" Moody's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Told you before, Potter. Anything that helps identify dark magic is something I approve of. Besides," he added, his magical eye fixing unervingly on Harry, "someone put your name in that goblet for a reason. Best you have every advantage possible." After giving them basic instructions for incorporating the new components and a gruff warning to be more careful next time, Moody left, his wooden leg clomping down the corridor. "Is it just me," Ron said when the footsteps had faded, "or is Moody way too interested in your little project?" "He's an ex-Auror obsessed with dark wizard catching," Hermione said reasonably, though she looked troubled. "Of course he'd be interested in a dark magic detector." "Still," Harry said, examining the silver fork, "it's odd how convenient his help always is. Almost like he knows exactly what we need before we do." The three friends exchanged uneasy glances as they began clearing up the destroyed classroom, each silently wondering just how much Professor Moody really knew about their secret project. "No, absolutely not," Hermione said firmly, crossing her arms. "It's too dangerous, Harry." Harry continued packing his invisibility cloak into his bag. "We need those fangs, Hermione. The venom is crucial for the destruction component." "Then let me come with you at least," she insisted. "Or me," Ron added. "You shouldn't go down to the chamber alone, mate." Harry shook his head. "The entrance only opens to Parseltongue. If something goes wrong, one of you needs to be able to get help." It was nearly midnight, 2 weeks before the Yule Ball. While most students were obsessing over dates and dress robes, Harry had been perfecting the improved detector with Moody's components. The detection capabilities now worked flawlessly, the device could identify and measure dark magic with remarkable precision. But the destruction mechanism remained theoretical without basilisk venom. "At least wait until after the holidays," Hermione pleaded. "You're exhausted, Harry. You've been working on that thing non-stop for weeks." It was true. Between classes, tournament preparation, and the detector project, Harry had been running on minimal sleep. Dark circles underlined his eyes, and he'd lost weight despite Hermione's insistence that he eat regularly. "Time's running out," Harry said quietly. "I can feel it. Something's coming, and we need to be ready." Ron and Hermione exchanged concerned glances. "Your scar hurting again?" Ron asked. Harry nodded reluctantly. "More frequently. And the dreams are getting more vivid." Dreams where Voldemort plotted his return, speaking of servants at Hogwarts and rituals requiring Harry's blood. Dreams that felt less like nightmares and more like glimpses of reality. "All the more reason not to go alone," Hermione argued. Harry slung his bag over his shoulder. "I'll be quick. In and out. Just need a couple of fangs." Seeing that he wouldn't be dissuaded, Hermione sighed. 2 hours. "If you're not back in 2 hours, we're getting Dumbledore." "Deal," Harry agreed. As he slipped out of the common room under his invisibility cloak, Harry felt a strange mix of trepidation and purpose. The Chamber of Secrets held nightmarish memories, but it also contained what he needed to complete his weapon against Voldemort. The castle corridors were eerily silent as Harry made his way to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. The ghost herself was thankfully absent, probably spying in the prefect's bathroom again. Harry removed his cloak, approached the sink with the snake-shaped tap, and hissed, "Open," in Parseltongue. The familiar grinding of stone filled the bathroom as the entrance revealed itself. Harry cast Lumos and began the long descent into the chamber. The tunnel seemed smaller than he remembered, though he supposed he had grown since his second year. The skeleton of the shed basilisk skin still lay where he'd seen it before, now dusty with age. When he reached the massive round door with its decorative serpents, another command in Parseltongue granted him entry to the chamber proper. The cavernous space was exactly as he remembered, the towering stone pillars carved with serpents, the imposing statue of Salazar Slytherin, and at its base, the massive corpse of the basilisk. 2 years had done little to diminish the creature's terrifying appearance. While decomposition had clearly begun, much of the enormous snake remained intact, preserved by the cool, dry air of the chamber and perhaps by the magical properties of the beast itself. Harry approached cautiously, wand raised. The basilisk's mouth lay partially open, revealing the foot-long fangs that had nearly killed him. One of those same fangs had destroyed Tom Riddle's diary, a Horcrux, Harry now realized. He needed to extract several without puncturing himself in the process. After casting several revealing charms to ensure there were no lingering curses or dangers, Harry carefully set to work. Using a combination of severing charms and dragon-hide gloves he'd borrowed from Hagrid's hut, he managed to extract 3 intact fangs from the basilisk's jaw. As he worked, Harry couldn't help noticing how the detector in his bag reacted, vibrating gently with the proximity to such powerful magical remains. He pulled it out, curious, and watched as the readings fluctuated. The basilisk itself registered as highly magical but not dark. However, when Harry pointed the detector toward the far end of the chamber where the diary had been destroyed, it showed traces of lingering dark magic. Residue from the Horcrux, Harry murmured to himself, making a mental note of the readings for calibration purposes. With the fangs secured in a specially reinforced box, Harry was about to leave when the detector suddenly emitted a sharp beep. The display flashed red, indicating powerful dark magic nearby, much stronger than the residual traces from the diary. Harry froze, scanning the chamber. Nothing seemed to have changed, yet the detector was reacting as if a major dark magical artifact was present. Heart pounding, Harry began moving the device in different directions, trying to triangulate the source. The signal strengthened as he approached Slytherin's statue. Harry hesitated, then began searching the base of the massive stone figure. The detector's readings intensified near a particular section of carved serpents. "Open," Harry hissed experimentally in Parseltongue. A section of stone slid away, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside lay a tarnished silver locket with an ornate S inlaid on its surface. The moment the compartment opened, the detector went wild, vibrating so violently that Harry nearly dropped it. "No way," Harry whispered, staring at the locket. "It can't be." But the detector's readings were unmistakable. Whatever this locket was, it contained the same type of dark magic as Riddle's diary. Another Horcrux, hidden within the chamber itself. Harry's mind raced. Should he take it? Destroy it immediately. The destruction component of his device wasn't ready yet, and attempting to destroy a Horcrux without proper preparation could be disastrous. After a moment's hesitation, Harry carefully levitated the locket into a second reinforced container. He would show it to Ron and Hermione, then decide how to proceed. Finding a Horcrux so soon, before the detector was even completed, seemed almost too convenient, which made Harry suspicious. With both the basilisk fangs and the unexpected Horcrux secured, Harry made his way back through the chamber, his mind churning with questions and possibilities. If the locket was indeed a Horcrux, they had a perfect test subject for the completed device. But something about the situation felt wrong, as if he was being led down a particular path by an unseen hand. As Harry emerged from Myrtle's bathroom and donned his invisibility cloak once more, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. He glanced around the empty corridor, seeing nothing, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Somewhere in the castle, someone knew what he was doing. And Harry wasn't sure if they were helping him or setting a trap. It's definitely a Horcrux, Hermione confirmed, the detector held carefully above the locked box containing the locket. The readings match exactly what we'd expect based on our research. They were in the room of requirement, which had appeared for them as a perfectly equipped workshop after Harry had paced before the blank wall thinking desperately of a secure place to examine the locket. After showing Ron and Hermione his findings from the chamber, they'd unanimously agreed that their previous classroom was too exposed for handling an actual Horcrux. So you know who hid one of his soul bits in Slytherin's chamber, Ron said, keeping his distance from the box. Makes sense, I guess. Who'd go looking there? No one who couldn't speak Parseltongue, Harry agreed. But it doesn't explain how I found it so easily. Almost like it wanted to be found. Hermione frowned. Horcruxes can have a certain influence. Remember how Riddle's diary affected Ginny. Ron's expression darkened at the mention of his sister's traumatic experience. So this thing could be affecting us too. Brilliant. We keep it contained, Harry decided. No one touches it directly. We use it only to calibrate the detector and test the destruction component once it's ready. He began unpacking the basilisk fangs, careful not to prick himself. These should give us what we need for the venom delivery system. About that, Hermione said, pulling out her notes. I've been researching methods to extract and stabilize the venom. We can't just crush the fangs into the device, we need a controlled delivery system. Harry nodded, already considering the design modifications they'd need. The electrical charge can activate a release mechanism. When the detector identifies a Horcrux, it triggers the system to inject venom at the exact point needed. Like a precision weapon, Ron observed. Target, aim, fire. Exactly, Harry agreed. But we need to test it thoroughly before using it on the locket. If we get it wrong. He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all understood the risks of mishandling both basilisk venom and a piece of Voldemort's soul. As they worked through the evening, incorporating the fangs into the device's design, Harry found himself repeatedly glancing at the box containing the locket. Even secured and out of sight, he could almost feel its presence, a malevolent awareness observing their efforts. Harry, Hermione said suddenly, interrupting his thoughts. The Yule Ball is tomorrow night. Harry blinked, momentarily disoriented by the shift in topic. Yeah. What about it? You haven't practiced dancing once, have you? Harry grimaced. As a champion, he was required to open the ball with the traditional first dance. Between the detector project and everything else, he'd completely forgotten. I'll wing it, he said dismissively, returning to the venom extraction apparatus he was assembling. Hermione rolled her eyes. You'll embarrass yourself in front of the entire school. Wouldn't be the first time, Harry muttered, though anxiety fluttered in his stomach. Public embarrassment was the least of his worries with everything else happening, but it wouldn't help his concentration on the more important tasks. 10 minutes, Hermione insisted, standing and holding out her hand. 10 minutes of practice now might save you hours of mortification tomorrow. Ron snickered from his workbench. Go on, mate. I need a break from basilisk bits anyway. Reluctantly, Harry allowed Hermione to give him a crash course in basic waltz steps. The room of requirement, sensing their need, cleared a space and provided soft music. Despite his initial resistance, Harry found the brief distraction oddly calming. For a few minutes, he wasn't the boy who lived or a Triwizard champion or even the creator of a Horcrux hunting device. He was just a 14-year-old boy learning to dance, stepping on his friend's toes and laughing when he got the steps wrong. Sorry, he said after a particularly bad misstep. Guess I'm rubbish at this too. You're not rubbish, Hermione said patiently. You're just not focusing. It's like spellcasting, intent and precision. Harry tried again, concentrating on the rhythm and the steps. This time he managed a full minute without stumbling. There, see? Hermione said, smiling. You'll survive the opening dance at least. Assuming Voldemort doesn't crash the party, Harry joked darkly. The light mood evaporated instantly. Ron flinched at the name, and Hermione's smile faded. Sorry, Harry sighed. Bad habit. It's fine, Hermione said, though her expression remained troubled. We should get back to work anyway. We're making good progress on the venom delivery system. As they returned to their respective tasks, Harry found himself thinking about the strange duality of his life at Hogwarts. On one hand, normal teenage concerns like the Yule Ball and awkward dancing lessons. On the other, basilisk venom extraction and Horcrux hunting. Most students were worrying about what color dress robes to wear, while he was building a device to destroy fragments of the Dark Lord's soul. The contrast would have been amusing if it wasn't so terrifying. The Yule Ball came and went in a blur of awkward dancing, dress robes, and diplomatic small talk with foreign students. Harry had attended with Parvati Patil, though he'd been a terrible date, distracted and restless, his mind constantly returning to the detector project and the locket hidden in the room of requirement. The day after Christmas, while most students were still recovering from the ball's festivities, Harry slipped away to the room of requirement. Ron was sleeping off the previous night's butterbeer consumption, and Hermione had gone to the library to research a new stabilizing charm they needed, leaving Harry alone with the nearly completed device. The detector now resembled a compact metal briefcase more than the modified Walkman it had originated from. Its exterior was sleek brushed aluminum, transfigured from classroom debris, with a sophisticated display panel and various dials and switches controlling its functions. Inside, the complex integration of magical and electronic components had been meticulously arranged, with the venom delivery system, a network of thin glass tubes connected to a central reservoir containing extracted basilisk venom, occupying the lower half. Harry ran diagnostic tests, checking each component's functioning. The detection system worked perfectly, able to identify and measure dark magic with remarkable precision. The destruction mechanism, however, remained untested. In theory, it would deliver a precisely targeted electrical charge that would rupture the venom tubes at exactly the right point, driving the deadly substance directly into the Horcrux while simultaneously disrupting its magical protections. In theory. Harry closed the case with a sigh. Without testing it on an actual Horcrux, he couldn't be certain the device would work as intended. But using their only confirmed Horcrux as a test subject was risky. If the device failed, they might lose their chance to study it further. The door to the room of requirement opened, and Harry tensed, relaxing only when he saw it was Hermione. Found something interesting, she said without preamble, dropping a stack of books onto the nearest table. Information about that locket. I think it might be Slytherin's. Slytherin's locket? Harry repeated. As in, a founder's relic? Hermione nodded, opening one of the books to a marked page. There are 4 famous relics associated with the Hogwarts founders. Gryffindor's sword, which you've already encountered, Ravenclaw's diadem, Hufflepuff's cup, and Slytherin's locket. Harry examined the illustrated page, which showed a silver locket identical to the one they'd found in the chamber. So Voldemort didn't just hide a Horcrux in Slytherin's chamber. He used Slytherin's own locket to make it. It makes a certain twisted sense, Hermione said. If you were creating vessels for pieces of your soul, wouldn't you choose items of significance? Especially for someone obsessed with his connection to Slytherin. Harry considered this, a new thought forming. If he used Slytherin's locket, he might have used the other founders' items too. He looked up at Hermione. We could be looking for specific objects, not just random Horcruxes. Hermione's eyes widened as she followed his logic. That would narrow our search considerably. The diary, the locket, what else might he have used? Before Harry could respond, the detector suddenly emitted a soft beep. Both of them froze, staring at the closed case. It's in passive detection mode, Harry said quietly. It shouldn't be activating unless there's dark magic nearby, Hermione finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Harry carefully opened the case, checking the display. The readings were unmistakable. Something with a dark magical signature was approaching the room of requirement. Someone's coming, Harry said, closing the case and grabbing his invisibility cloak. Hide the books. Hermione quickly gathered the volumes about Founders' relics while Harry concealed the detector under his cloak. They had barely managed to arrange themselves to look casually occupied with homework when the door opened again. Professor Moody stood in the doorway, his magical eye swiveling to take in the room's contents before fixing disconcertingly on the exact spot where Harry had hidden the detector under his cloak. Interesting choice of study location, Moody growled, clomping into the room. Most students prefer the library. It's quieter here, Hermione said, her voice admirably steady. With everyone celebrating after the ball, the common room is too noisy. Moody's scarred face twisted into what might have been a skeptical expression. Indeed. And what might you be working on that requires such privacy? Just homework, Harry said, gesturing to the scattered parchment on the table. Potions essay. Is that so? Moody's magical eye hadn't moved from the spot where the detector was hidden. Curious, then, that my dark detector has been registering unusual activity in this part of the castle recently. Harry and Hermione exchanged quick glances. Perhaps there's an explanation, Moody continued, moving closer. Perhaps certain students have been experimenting with powerful magic beyond their years. Magic involving dark artifacts, even. Harry felt his heart racing. Had Moody somehow discovered the locket? Or was he simply detecting the residual dark magic from their experiments? Professor, Harry began carefully, we've been researching defense methods, like you encouraged. Nothing dark. Researching, yes, Moody said, his normal eye fixing intently on Harry while the magical one continued staring at the hidden detector. But also building, from what I understand. Building something quite remarkable. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Harry considered his options. Moody had already provided components for the detector. He clearly knew more than he was letting on. Perhaps it was time for a calculated risk. Would you like to see our progress? Harry asked suddenly, ignoring Hermione's startled look. Moody's expression shifted to one of intense interest. I thought you'd never ask, Potter. Harry pulled aside the invisibility cloak, revealing the detector. We've incorporated your components. The mercury buffer works perfectly. Moody approached, examining the device with an almost hungry expression. Impressive craftsmanship. And the detection capability? It can identify and measure dark magic signatures with 98% accuracy, Harry said, activating the display to demonstrate. We've calibrated it to detect specific types of dark magic too. Such as? Moody pressed. Harry hesitated, exchanging another glance with Hermione. Soul magic, he said finally. Specifically, objects containing soul fragments. Moody went very still. Horcruxes, he said, the word hanging ominously in the air. You're hunting Horcruxes. Neither Harry nor Hermione denied it. Bold, Moody said after a long moment. Very bold. And the destruction component? Still in testing, Harry admitted. We have the theory sound, but haven't conducted a live trial. Moody's tongue flicked out, lizard-like, wetting his lips. And what would you need for such a trial? An actual Horcrux, Hermione said cautiously. Moody nodded slowly, his magical eye finally shifting to scan the entire room. And if you had such an item? What then? Harry felt as if they were balancing on a knife's edge. Moody clearly knew or suspected they had found a Horcrux. The question was whether to trust him with that information. Before Harry could decide, Moody spoke again. The second task approaches, Potter. February 24th will be upon you before you know it. Perhaps your energies would be better focused there for the time being. The abrupt change of subject caught Harry off guard. I'm working on that too, he said, though in truth he'd made little progress with the golden eggs clue. See that you do, Moody said cryptically. Wouldn't want anything to distract you from the tournament. With that odd statement hanging in the air, Moody turned and clomped toward the door. Impressive work on the detector, Potter. Your mother would be proud. He paused at the threshold. But remember, some tools reveal more about their creators than their targets. Be careful what you build. After the door closed behind him, Harry and Hermione remained silent for several long seconds. That was weird, Harry finally said. Extremely, Hermione agreed. Do you think he knows about the locket? I think he suspects something, Harry said, checking the detector's readings. Interestingly, the dark magic signature had faded as Moody left. But why didn't he push harder if he did? Hermione bit her lip thoughtfully. Maybe he's testing us. Seeing how much we'll volunteer. Or maybe, Harry said slowly, a chilling thought forming, he's interested in the device itself. Not to find Horcruxes, but for some other purpose. The implications of that possibility hung heavily between them. If Moody, or someone else, had ulterior motives for the detector technology, they could be inadvertently creating a weapon for the wrong side. We need to be more careful, Harry decided. No more working on this in the room of requirement. It's too exposed. Where then? Hermione asked. Harry considered for a moment. The Chamber of Secrets. No one but me can access it, and we know it's secure. Hermione shuddered slightly at the suggestion but nodded. Logical, if unpleasant. When do we move everything? Tonight, Harry said firmly. After everyone's asleep. I don't want to take any chances. As they packed up their materials, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that they were being manipulated in some way. Moody's convenient help, the too easy discovery of the locket, the professor's strange behavior just now, it all felt connected, though the pattern remained frustratingly unclear. Whatever game was being played, Harry was determined not to be just another piece on the board. He'd build his device, find the Horcruxes, and face whatever came next on his own terms. The thought brought both determination and dread. Time was running out, and the stakes kept rising. If he was right about Voldemort's return being imminent, the detector might be their only hope of stopping it. No pressure, Harry thought grimly. Just the fate of the wizarding world resting on a teenager's homebrew science project. The weeks following Christmas blurred together in a haze of secret work sessions in the Chamber of Secrets, sporadic attempts to decipher the golden eggs clue, and increasing paranoia about who might know about their project. In late January, a breakthrough finally came, not with the detector, but with the tournament. After an accidental hint from Cedric Diggory and an embarrassing bath in the prefect's bathroom with Moaning Myrtle for company, Harry discovered the egg's message: he would have to retrieve something precious from the mere people in the Black Lake. So you'll have to swim, Ron summarized when Harry explained the clue. They were in the Chamber of Secrets, which they'd partially transformed into a more hospitable workshop by conjuring lights, furniture, and air-freshening charms to combat the musty smell. For an hour, Harry confirmed grimly. Underwater. Hermione looked up from the detector, which she'd been recalibrating. We'll need to research water-breathing methods. Bubblehead charm, perhaps, or a transfiguration approach. Harry nodded, though his attention was more focused on the detector than the upcoming task. After weeks of refinements, the destruction component was nearly ready for testing. They had conducted numerous trials with lesser dark objects, cursed items borrowed from the Room of Requirement, with increasing success. About the locket, Harry said, changing the subject. I think we're ready to test the full system on it. Ron and Hermione both looked apprehensive. You sure, mate? Ron asked. It's our only confirmed Horcrux. If something goes wrong. Which is exactly why we need to test it, Harry argued. What if we find another one but can't destroy it? Better to know now if the device works. Hermione bit her lip. Harry's right. We've done all the preliminary testing we can. The next step is a live trial. Tomorrow night, Harry decided. After curfew. We'll have everything prepared and run the full sequence. As they discussed the final preparations, Harry felt a familiar mixture of excitement and dread. The detector represented months of work, countless hours of research, and more magical theory than he'd ever imagined himself capable of understanding. If it worked, they would have a weapon against Voldemort that the Dark Wizard could never anticipate. If it failed, Harry preferred not to think about that possibility. What about after? Ron asked suddenly. If it works, I mean. What's next? We find the rest, Harry said simply. According to what Moody said to Dumbledore, there are 7 in total. We've got the diary, which is already destroyed, and the locket. That leaves 5 more. And you think they might be other Founders' items? Hermione asked, referring to their earlier theory. Harry nodded. It fits his obsession with Hogwarts and his own heritage. The diary was personal to him. The locket belonged to Slytherin. I bet at least some of the others follow the pattern. So Hufflepuff's cup, Ravenclaw's diadem. Ron counted off. Gryffindor's sword is the only confirmed Founder's relic that's accounted for, Hermione added. And Dumbledore seems to trust it, so it's probably not a Horcrux. That still leaves several unidentified, Harry said. But the detector should help us find them once it's fully operational. The conversation shifted to the likely locations of other Horcruxes, with theories ranging from Gringotts vaults to ancient magical sites. Throughout the discussion, Harry found himself repeatedly glancing at the locked box containing the locket. Even secured and warded, its presence felt malevolent, a subtle wrongness that tugged at the edges of his awareness. Tomorrow they would attempt to destroy it. The thought should have been comforting, but instead, Harry felt strangely uneasy. As if destroying the locket would set something else in motion, something they weren't prepared for. The next evening, everything was ready. The Chamber of Secrets had been arranged for the test, with the detector positioned on a stone table and the locket secured in a specially designed containment field at the center of a complex array of runes. Final checks, Harry announced, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. Hermione verified the rune sequence while Ron confirmed the venom reservoir was properly filled and pressurized. Harry conducted the electronic diagnostics, ensuring all circuits and magical interfaces were functioning optimally. All systems operational, Harry said, unable to keep the tension from his voice. Ready for test activation. With careful movements, Harry opened the locked box and levitated the locket into position at the center of the runic array. The moment it settled into place, the detector's display flashed crimson, reading spiking off the scale. Definitely a Horcrux, Ron muttered, keeping his distance. Nasty piece of work. Harry positioned the detector's targeting array, aligning it with the locket. The device hummed with power, the magical and electrical components working in perfect harmony. Charging destruction sequence, Harry said, activating the final protocol. The device's hum intensified, and the venom tubes began to glow with a subtle green light. 10 seconds to activation. As the countdown reached 3 seconds, a strange hissing emanated from the locket. Harry froze, his blood turning to ice as he recognized Parseltongue. Heir of Slytherin, the locket hissed. Your weapon is impressive, but futile. Before Harry could react, the locket suddenly flipped open. A dark mist erupted from within, swirling upward to form a shadowy approximation of a face, a younger, handsome version of Voldemort, similar to but distinct from the Tom Riddle Harry had encountered in the chamber 2 years prior. Harry Potter, the apparition said, its voice now in English. So determined. So clever. Building a device to destroy me when you don't even understand what you are. Shut up, Harry snapped, his finger hovering over the activation switch. You're just a fragment. A piece of a monster. The shadowy Voldemort laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. Am I? Or are we more alike than you dare admit? Can you not feel the connection between us, Harry Potter? The reason your scar burns. The reason you speak my ancestors' tongue. Harry's hand trembled over the switch. You're lying. You know I'm not, the apparition replied. Deep down, you've always known. Why else does your detector react to your scar as it does to me? Harry's blood ran cold. He had tested the detector on his scar, but never mentioned the results to anyone, not even Ron and Hermione. Harry, don't listen. Hermione shouted. It's trying to distract you. The apparition turned its attention to her. The clever mudblood. Always by his side, always pushing him forward. Do you know what he is, I wonder? What you're helping him become? Harry, activate it now. Ron yelled, his face pale but determined. The shadowy Voldemort's attention snapped back to Harry. Do it then. Destroy this fragment if you can. But remember, Harry Potter, in destroying me, you may be practicing for your own destruction. With a surge of determination, Harry slammed his hand down on the activation switch. The detector released a focused pulse of magical energy that momentarily suspended all protective enchantments around the locket, while simultaneously triggering the venom delivery system. A concentrated stream of basilisk venom erupted from the device, propelled by both mechanical pressure and magical force. It struck the locket with pinpoint accuracy, just as the electrical discharge reached its peak. The locket's surface bubbled and hissed as the venom ate through the silver. The apparition writhed and screamed, its form distorting grotesquely before collapsing back into the locket. A shockwave of dark energy blasted outward, knocking all 3 of them off their feet. When Harry managed to stand again, ears ringing from the explosion, he saw the locket on the stone table, blackened, twisted, and unmistakably destroyed. The detector's display showed no trace of the dark magical signature that had previously emanated from the Horcrux. It worked, Hermione whispered, climbing to her feet. It actually worked. Ron stood shakily, staring at the destroyed locket. Bloody hell. That was intense. Harry approached the table cautiously, examining both the ruined Horcrux and the detector. The device had sustained some damage from the magical backlash, but its core systems remained operational. We did it, Harry said, a mixture of triumph and unease in his voice. We can destroy Horcruxes. Harry, Hermione said hesitantly. What it said about your scar. Harry tensed. It was lying. Trying to distract us. But how did it know you tested the detector on your scar, she pressed. It was in my head somehow, Harry said, not meeting her eyes. Reading my thoughts maybe. It doesn't matter. Ron and Hermione exchanged concerned glances but didn't push further. Instead, they began examining the detector for damage and discussing necessary repairs. As they worked, Harry found himself repeatedly touching his scar, the apparition's words echoing in his mind. Was there truth in what it had said? Was there some connection between him and Voldemort that went beyond their shared history? The detector had reacted to his scar, not as strongly as to an actual Horcrux, but in a similar pattern. What did that mean? And why had he been so reluctant to tell his friends about it? Questions without answers swirled in Harry's mind as they packed up their equipment. The successful test should have felt like an unmitigated victory, but instead, it had opened a door to disturbing new possibilities that Harry wasn't sure he was ready to explore. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the detector suddenly beeped. All three froze, staring at the device. "Another dark magic signature?" Hermione asked, peering at the display. Harry checked the readings, his expression growing confused. "It's detecting something, up there." He pointed toward the ceiling of the chamber. "In the castle somewhere." "Something like the locket?" Ron asked nervously. Harry adjusted the settings, focusing the detection. "Similar pattern, but different location. It's moving." "Someone carrying a Horcrux?" Hermione suggested. "Or someone who's been in contact with dark magic recently," Harry said. The detector's directional indicator pointed unmistakably toward the main areas of the castle. "We need to investigate," Harry decided. "If there's another Horcrux in Hogwarts, we need to find it." As they made their way out of the chamber, the successful destruction of the locket was overshadowed by this new mystery. Something dark was moving through Hogwarts. And whatever, or whoever, it was, the detector had found its trail. Harry clutched the device tightly as they ascended toward the school. One Horcrux down, but the hunt was just beginning. And with the second task of the Triwizard Tournament less than a month away, Harry had a sinking feeling that the two challenges were about to collide in ways none of them could predict. Chapter 3, the first Horcrux. The detector led them upward through the castle's winding corridors, its soft beeping growing more insistent as they climbed higher. Harry's mind raced with possibilities. Another Horcrux hidden at Hogwarts. Someone carrying a dark artifact. Or something else entirely. "Seventh floor," Harry whispered as they reached the top of yet another staircase. "Whatever it is, it's up here." Ron glanced nervously over his shoulder. "We're way past curfew, mate." "If Filch catches us, he won't," Harry replied, checking the Marauder's map. "He's down by the dungeons." "But look, there's someone pacing in the corridor ahead." Hermione peered at the map. "Bartemius Crouch? Isn't he supposed to be ill? Percy's been substituting for him as tournament judge." "That's what everyone says," Harry confirmed, frowning at the dot moving back and forth across a particular stretch of corridor. "What's he doing here in the middle of the night?" The detector's beeping intensified, and Harry quickly silenced it with a tap of his wand. "The dark magic signature is definitely coming from that direction." "From Crouch?" Ron asked incredulously. "Or from something near him," Harry said. He glanced at the map again and suddenly realized where Crouch was pacing. "He's by that tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. Right where the room of requirement appears." Hermione's eyes widened. "You think he's trying to access it?" "One way to find out," Harry said, checking to ensure they were all properly covered by the invisibility cloak before moving forward. They approached cautiously, the detector vibrating silently in Harry's hand. As they turned the corner, they saw Bartemius Crouch, but not the neatly dressed ministry official Harry remembered from the World Cup. This Crouch looked disheveled and frantic, muttering to himself as he paced before the blank wall. "I need the place where things are hidden," he was saying under his breath. "Where the lost can be found. Where he placed it." On his third pass, a door materialized in the wall. Crouch grabbed the handle and slipped inside. "Should we follow him?" Ron whispered. Harry hesitated, then nodded. "Carefully. I want to know what he's looking for." They waited until the door was about to close, then darted forward to catch it. Inside, the room of requirement had transformed into a vast cathedral-like space filled with thousands of objects, broken furniture, banned books, forgotten treasures, and mysterious artifacts piled in towering heaps and meandering aisles. "Bloody hell," Ron breathed. "What is all this?" "Centuries of hidden things," Hermione whispered back. "Everything students and staff ever needed to conceal." The detector was now vibrating continuously, its display shifting between amber and red. Whatever dark magic it had detected was definitely in this room, possibly multiple sources, given the erratic readings. They moved deeper into the room, following both the detector's guidance and the distant sounds of Crouch rummaging through the piles. As they navigated the cluttered aisles, Harry noticed the readings growing stronger near certain objects, though none triggered the full Horcrux detection pattern. Dark artifacts, he murmured, indicating several items that caused minor spikes on the detector. This place is full of them. A crash from several aisles over sent them hurrying in that direction. They found Crouch kneeling beside an overturned cabinet, frantically digging through a pile of broken objects. "It must be here," he was muttering. "The Dark Lord said it would be here." Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged alarmed glances beneath the cloak. The Dark Lord? Was Crouch working for Voldemort? Suddenly, the detector gave a sharp spike, the display flashing crimson. Harry froze, carefully turning to pinpoint the source. The reading led him to look upward, where a tarnished tiara sat perched on the head of a discolored stone bust on top of a nearby cabinet. The pattern matched the lockets exactly. Another Horcrux. Harry's heart hammered in his chest. Should they grab it? Try to destroy it immediately? Or continue observing Crouch? The decision was made for them when Crouch suddenly stopped his search and stiffened, head tilting as if listening. Then, to their horror, he pulled out a flask and took a long drink. Before their eyes, his features began to bubble and shift, his body contorting grotesquely. "Polyjuice potion," Hermione gasped, then immediately clapped a hand over her mouth. Too late. The transforming figure spun toward the sound, wand raised. "Who's there?" he demanded in a voice no longer Crouch's. "Show yourself." As the transformation completed, they found themselves staring not at Bartemius Crouch, but at Barty Crouch Jr., the Death Eater who was supposed to be dead in Azkaban. "Impossible," Ron breathed. The slight sound was enough for Crouch Jr. to send a blasting curse in their direction. The spell struck a pile of furniture next to them, sending debris flying and ripping the invisibility cloak from their huddled forms. "Potter!" Crouch snarled, his face contorting with manic glee. "I might have known. Always turning up where you're not wanted." Harry raised his wand, mind racing. "You're supposed to be dead." "Many things are not as they seem," Crouch replied, his tongue flicking out in a familiar lizard-like motion that sent a chill down Harry's spine. "Including your dear Professor Moody." The realization hit Harry like a physical blow. "You've been impersonating Moody all year." "The real Moody is alive, for now," Crouch confirmed with a twisted smile. "I need his hair for the polyjuice, after all." His gaze dropped to the detector in Harry's hand, and his expression darkened. "And I see you've completed your little project. The device that can detect and destroy the Dark Lord's treasures." "How do you know about that?" Hermione demanded, her wand steady despite her obvious fear. Crouch laughed, a high, unhinged sound. "Who do you think guided you every step of the way? The components, the encouragement, the suggestions about soul magic. All leading you to build exactly what the Dark Lord needs to protect his most valuable creations." Harry felt sick. "You've been using us." "Using me?" "Not entirely," Crouch admitted. "The idea was your own, Potter. I merely nurtured it. And now I'll be taking that device off your hands." "Like hell you will," Ron growled, stepping partially in front of Harry. Crouch's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what's happening here, children. The Dark Lord rises again even as we speak. His loyal servant has ensured it." He tapped his chest proudly. "The Triwizard Tournament, your convenient entry, Potter, all part of the plan to deliver you to him for the ritual." "What ritual?" Harry demanded, though he had a sickening suspicion he already knew. "Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken," Crouch recited, his eyes gleaming fanatically. "The final ingredient. But the detector, that was an unexpected bonus. A way to ensure the Dark Lord's anchors remain secure." Harry's grip tightened on both his wand and the detector. "If you think I'm just going to hand this over, I don't expect you to do anything but die, Potter," Crouch snapped. But first, I'll have that device. Expelliarmus. Harry ducked the spell, pushing Ron and Hermione behind a towering pile of junk. Split up, he hissed. I'll keep him distracted. Hermione, try to get to the tiara. It's another Horcrux. Without waiting for a response, Harry darted out from cover, firing a stunning spell at Crouch before diving behind a broken wardrobe. Curses flew overhead, smashing into the surrounding debris and sending clouds of dust into the air. You can't escape, Potter. Crouch shouted, his voice echoing through the cavernous room. The Dark Lord has waited too long for this moment. Harry peered around the edge of the wardrobe, spotting Crouch advancing slowly down the aisle. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Hermione carefully making her way toward the cabinet where the tiara sat, while Ron circled around to flank Crouch from behind. So you're the one who put my name in the goblet, Harry called out, hoping to keep Crouch's attention focused on him. Why go through all the trouble? Why not just kidnap me from Hogsmeade or something? Crouch laughed again. The Dark Lord's plan is elegant, Potter. Your disappearance during the third task will seem like a tragic tournament accident. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, he will have returned to full power. Harry shifted positions, catching glimpses of Ron and Hermione as they maneuvered through the cluttered room. He needed to keep Crouch talking. And what about the Horcruxes? Why leave me to build something that could destroy them? Your device has dual purposes, Crouch replied, casting revealing spells into the surrounding piles. While it can indeed destroy a Horcrux if used correctly, it can also be modified to enhance their protections. The Dark Lord appreciates the irony of using your creation against you. Harry felt a surge of anger. All their work, all those months of research and experimentation, potentially turned against them. Against him. Besides, Crouch continued, you've already proven the concept by destroying Slytherin's locket. A locket I arranged for you to find in the chamber. You put it there? Harry asked, genuinely surprised. How? You can't speak Parseltongue. No, but the Dark Lord can, Crouch said. Even weakened, he provided the necessary instructions. A gift for his faithful servant. As Crouch spoke, Harry saw Hermione finally reach the cabinet with the tiara. She carefully levitated it down while Crouch's attention remained on Harry. At the same time, Ron had positioned himself behind their adversary, wand raised. Harry needed to make his move. Activating the detector with one hand, he aimed his wand with the other. Lumos Maxima, he shouted, creating a blinding flash of light. Crouch recoiled, temporarily blinded, as Ron shouted, Stupefy, from behind. The stunning spell struck Crouch's shoulder, causing him to stagger but not fall. He whirled toward Ron, fury contorting his features. Crucio! Crouch screamed, the unforgivable curse missing Ron by inches as he dove for cover. Harry used the distraction to sprint toward Hermione, who now held the tiara, Ravenclaw's diadem, he realized, at arm's length. Got it, she called as he approached. Detectors ready, Harry replied, checking the displays. Full power to the destruction sequence. Crouch, recovering from his momentary distraction, spotted them across the room. No, he roared, charging toward them. Avada Kedavra. The killing curse flew wide, striking a pile of books that exploded in a shower of burning pages. The fire spread rapidly to surrounding objects, many of which contained various magical substances that reacted violently. Run! Harry shouted as multiple explosions rocked the room. He grabbed Hermione's arm with one hand, clutching the detector with the other as they raced toward the exit. Ron emerged from behind a falling bookcase, narrowly avoiding the spreading flames. Give me that diadem, Mudblood! Crouch screamed, pursuing them through the increasingly hazardous maze of burning artifacts. Cursed objects ignited around them, releasing clouds of noxious magical smoke and occasionally detonating with concussive force. They reached the main aisle leading to the door, but found it blocked by a wall of magical fire. The flames twisted into grotesque shapes, serpents, chimeras, dragons, as if alive and hunting them. Fiend fire, Hermione gasped in horror. We can't fight that. This way. Ron shouted, pointing to a narrow gap between two teetering piles of furniture. There might be another exit. As they changed direction, Harry felt the detector vibrating wildly in his hand. The diadem's dark signature was intensifying in response to the chaos around them. If they couldn't destroy it properly with the device, the uncontrolled magic of the room might do it for them, but it could kill them too. We need to get out of here, Harry panted as they squeezed through the gap. The whole room's becoming unstable. Behind them, Crouch's maniacal laughter echoed above the roar of the magical fire. Nowhere to run, Potter. The Dark Lord will welcome you in death if not in the ritual. They emerged into another wide aisle, this one not yet consumed by flames but rapidly filling with smoke. At the far end, Harry spotted what appeared to be a different door than the one they'd entered through. There, he pointed. The room's trying to help us escape. As they sprinted toward the door, a section of ceiling collapsed behind them, momentarily blocking Crouch's pursuit. The detector continued its frantic warning, and Harry felt the diadem in Hermione's hand growing physically hot. It's reacting to the fire. Hermione cried, nearly dropping it. We need to contain it. Harry quickly adjusted the detector's settings, activating the containment field they'd designed for transport of dark objects. A shimmering bubble of energy enveloped the diadem, muffling its magical emanations. They reached the door just as Crouch emerged from a different aisle, his robes smoldering and face blackened with soot. Potter, he screamed, raising his wand for a final curse. Ron yanked the door open and they tumbled through, slamming it shut behind them. They found themselves in a completely different corridor than where they'd started. The room of requirement had indeed created an escape route. Seal it. Harry gasped, and Hermione immediately cast several powerful locking charms on the door. Not a moment too soon, the door bulged outward as something massive struck it from the other side, but the charms held. After several tense seconds, the pounding stopped. Is he? Ron began. I don't know, Harry said honestly. But we can't stay here. We need to get somewhere safe and destroy this properly. He indicated the contained diadem. Where? Hermione asked, coughing from the smoke they'd all inhaled. Crouch knows about our workshop in the chamber. Harry thought quickly. The actual chamber itself. The main room where the basilisk was. It's huge, magically reinforced, and there's nothing left to damage if something goes wrong. They moved swiftly through the nighttime corridors, checking the Marauder's map constantly for signs of pursuit. Whether Crouch had perished in the room of requirement or escaped through another route, they couldn't be certain. Either way, they needed to destroy the Horcrux before anyone else could claim it. When they reached Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, Harry opened the chamber entrance without hesitation. The familiar descent felt both longer and shorter than usual, adrenaline distorting their perception of time. In the main chamber, they set up the detector on a flat stone surface far from any columns or structures. The device had sustained some damage in their escape, but its core functions remained operational. Containment field disengaging, Harry announced, carefully manipulating the controls. The shimmering bubble around the diadem faded, and the detector immediately registered the full intensity of its dark magic. Definitely a Horcrux, Ron confirmed, checking the readings over Harry's shoulder. Same pattern as the locket. Ravenclaw's diadem, Hermione said, examining it without touching it directly. One of the lost founder's relics. It's said to enhance the wisdom of the wearer. Well, wearing a piece of Voldemort's soul on your head doesn't sound very wise to me, Harry said grimly, finalizing the destruction sequence. Stand back. The venom delivery system was damaged in the fire, so this might be messier than last time. Ron and Hermione retreated to a safe distance as Harry activated the detector's destruction sequence. The device hummed with power, its remaining venom tubes glowing with that eerie green light. Destruction sequence activated, Harry reported, backing away from the device. 10 seconds to discharge. As the countdown reached 5 seconds, the diadem began to vibrate on the stone surface. At 3 seconds, a high-pitched keening sound emanated from it, rising in intensity until it was almost unbearable. "Cover your ears," Harry shouted just before the detector reached 0. The discharge was more violent than with the locket. A concentrated blast of basilisk venom struck the diadem at the exact moment the magical disruption field reached maximum intensity. The combination shattered the magical protections around the Horcrux, allowing the venom to penetrate the artifact itself. A terrible scream erupted from the diadem, not a human voice, but something far more primal. A writhing mass of black smoke poured from the jewel at its center, forming briefly into a distorted face before the venom completed its work. The smoke figure contorted in apparent agony, then exploded outward in a shock wave that knocked them all off their feet for the second time that night. When the echoes faded, Harry pushed himself up to see the diadem on the stone surface, blackened, twisted, and unmistakably destroyed. The detector beside it sparked occasionally, clearly damaged beyond simple repair. "That's 2, Harry said, his voice hoarse from smoke and shouting. 2 Horcruxes destroyed. "And the diary makes 3, Ron added, helping Hermione to her feet. "How many did you say Moody, Crouch, mentioned?" 7. 7 parts, Harry corrected, approaching the destroyed diadem cautiously. "The diary, the locket, the diadem, that leaves 4 more. 1 is Voldemort himself, so 3 more Horcruxes to find." Hermione examined the damaged detector. "We'll need to rebuild this. The destruction component is completely fried." "We know how now," Harry said with more confidence than he felt. "We can make it better, stronger. We've proved the concept works." The chamber suddenly shook slightly, dust drifting down from the ceiling. All 3 of them tensed, wands raised. "What was that?" Ron whispered. "Not sure," Harry replied, straining to listen. "Felt like an explosion somewhere in the castle." "The room of requirement?" Hermione suggested. "All those magical fires and unstable artifacts." Another, stronger tremor ran through the chamber. This one was accompanied by a distant boom that echoed through the stone passages. "Something's happening up there," Harry said, suddenly anxious. "We need to check." They gathered the destroyed diadem and damaged detector, then made their way back up to the bathroom. As they emerged, they heard the unmistakable sounds of commotion echoing through the castle, shouts, running footsteps, and what might have been spell fire. Harry pulled out the Marauder's map, activating it with a whispered oath. The map revealed chaos, students emerging from dormitories, teachers converging on the 7th floor, and multiple dots labeled with names Harry didn't recognize moving through the corridors. "Death Eaters," he breathed, pointing to a cluster of infamous names, Dolohov, Mulciber, not. "They're in the castle." "How?" Ron demanded, his face pale in the dim bathroom light. "How did they get past the wards?" "Crouch," Hermione realized. "He's been impersonating Moody, a trusted professor, all year. He could have created a way in." Harry's heart sank as he spotted another name on the map, one he'd hoped never to see again. "Voldemort," he whispered. "He's here. In the castle." Ron and Hermione crowded closer, following his gaze to the dot labeled Tom Riddle moving deliberately through the 3rd-floor corridor toward the Great Hall. "He can't be," Hermione said, her voice shaking. "The ritual," Crouch said. "They needed you for the ritual." "Maybe they found another way," Harry suggested grimly. "Or maybe they just need me dead now." "We need to warn everyone," Ron insisted. "Get to Dumbledore." Harry nodded, checking the map again. "Dumbledore's in his office with McGonagall and Moody." He frowned. "The real Moody must have escaped or been rescued." "Then that's where we go," Hermione decided. "They need to know about the Horcruxes. About what we've done and what's still out there." As they prepared to leave the bathroom, Harry paused to look at the damaged detector in his hands. Despite its current state, it represented their best hope of finding and destroying the remaining Horcruxes. Without it, Voldemort would remain tethered to life no matter how many times they defeated him. "I'm not running," Harry said suddenly, resolution hardening his voice. "Voldemort's been hunting me my entire life. It's time I hunted him back." "Harry, no," Hermione protested. "We need to get help." "You two get to Dumbledore," Harry countered. "Tell him everything, about Crouch, the Horcruxes, the detector." "I'm going to find Voldemort." "That's mental," Ron exclaimed. "He'll kill you." "Not if I have this," Harry replied, holding up the detector. "It's damaged but still functioning. I can track him with it. And it still has one vial of basilisk venom intact." Hermione grabbed his arm. "Harry, listen to yourself. You can't face Voldemort alone." "I'm not trying to defeat him," Harry explained, his mind racing ahead. "Just track him. Find out what he's after. Maybe delay him until Dumbledore arrives." Ron and Hermione still looked unconvinced, but Harry's determination was unshakable. After a brief but intense argument, they reached a compromise. Ron would go to Dumbledore while Hermione accompanied Harry, both staying under the invisibility cloak and avoiding direct confrontation. 20 minutes, Ron insisted. "If Dumbledore hasn't reached you in 20 minutes, you get out of there. Promise me." "Promise," Harry agreed, though in his heart he knew that if he had a chance to strike at Voldemort, he would take it, regardless of the danger. They parted at the grand staircase, Ron heading up toward the headmaster's office while Harry and Hermione, concealed under the cloak, descended toward the Great Hall. The detector, set to passive scanning mode, led them like a compass toward the dark magical signature that could only be Voldemort himself. As they moved through the strangely empty corridors, the evidence of battle became increasingly apparent: scorched walls, shattered statues, and in one corridor, the ominous sight of a student, thankfully just petrified, not dead, propped against a wall. "They're clearing a path for him," Hermione whispered as they carefully stepped over debris. "The Death Eaters are securing the castle." Harry nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the detector's display. "He's in the Great Hall now. Not moving. Waiting for something, or someone." When they reached the entrance hall, they found the massive doors to the Great Hall closed but unguarded. Strange, given the Death Eater presence throughout the castle. Either they were very confident, or... "It's a trap," Hermione breathed, coming to the same realization. "They know you'll come." "Probably," Harry agreed. "But they don't know about this." He indicated the detector. "Or what we've done to his Horcruxes." They approached the doors cautiously, and Harry pressed his ear against the wood. Voices murmured within, too muffled to discern words, but multiple speakers engaged in what sounded like an intense discussion. "We need to see what's happening," Harry whispered, looking around for options. "The side chamber maybe? The one where the champions gathered after the goblet ceremony?" Hermione nodded, and they circled around to the smaller door that led to the antechamber adjacent to the Great Hall. This door was ajar, allowing them to slip inside without making a sound. The antechamber was empty, but the door connecting it to the Great Hall proper was open just enough to provide a view of the main space. Harry and Hermione crouched beside it, peering through the crack. The sight that met them froze the blood in Harry's veins. Voldemort stood in the center of the Great Hall, fully corporeal and terrible in his restored form. Tall and skeletally thin, with chalk-white skin and scarlet eyes with vertical pupils, he looked barely human. His flat, snake-like nostrils flared as he surveyed the room with evident satisfaction. Around him stood a circle of Death Eaters, masks removed, watching their master with a mixture of fear and adulation. Lucius Malfoy, Bellatrix Lestrange, Antonin Dolohov, faces Harry had only seen in newspaper clippings, were now present in the flesh, their wands ready. But what truly horrified Harry was what lay on the staff table, repurposed as an altar. The bodies of several students, He recognized Cedric Diggory among them, were arranged in a ritual pattern, their life force apparently used in whatever ceremony had restored Voldemort to his body. "The boy will come," Voldemort was saying, his high, cold voice carrying clearly across the hall. "His heroic nature demands it. And when he does, the prophecy will be fulfilled, on my terms." "My lord," Lucius Malfoy ventured, "the old man will not be detained forever. Severus reports that Dumbledore has already overcome the diversions we placed." "Dumbledore is irrelevant," Voldemort dismissed with a wave of his skeletal hand. "By the time he arrives, Harry Potter will be dead, and my victory assured." Harry felt Hermione's hand gripping his arm painfully tight. Her face had gone ashen, but her eyes burned with the same determination he felt. Together, they retreated deeper into the antechamber to confer. "We need to leave," Hermione whispered urgently. "Now." "Get to Dumbledore." "No," Harry interrupted, his voice barely audible but fierce. "Cedric is dead. Others too. Because of me, because Voldemort wanted me. This ends tonight." "Harry, please," Hermione pleaded. "We can't." "We can," Harry insisted, holding up the detector. "This is still working. And it still has one vial of basilisk venom. If I can get close enough." Hermione stared at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You're going to use it on him directly. Not on a Horcrux." "He's a Horcrux maker," Harry reasoned. "The venom should affect him too. Maybe not kill him completely, but weaken him enough for Dumbledore to finish the job." "It's suicide," Hermione said flatly. "Not if we're smart about it," Harry countered. "I have the cloak. I have the detector. And I have surprise. He doesn't know what we've built or what we've destroyed." Hermione looked torn between despair and calculation. Finally, her analytical mind engaged with the problem. "If you're doing this, and I still think it's madness, you need more than just the venom. You need a distraction." "What kind of distraction?" A grim smile touched Hermione's lips. "The kind that strikes at his ego. Tell him about the Horcruxes we've destroyed. Show him the evidence." Harry's eyes widened at the audacity of the plan. "Make him angry. Make him careless." "Exactly," Hermione nodded. "Meanwhile, I'll circle around under the cloak and position the detector. When he's focused on you, I'll activate it." "Too dangerous," Harry objected immediately. "He'll kill you if he spots you." "He'll kill you if I don't help," Hermione retorted. "We do this together or not at all." Their whispered argument was interrupted by the sound of the great hall doors opening. New voices joined the assembly, including one Harry recognized with a jolt of shock. "Ah, Barty," Voldemort's voice drifted through the crack in the door. "You've recovered from your misadventure." "Yes, my lord," Cain Crouch Jr.'s voice, ragged but worshipful. "The fire almost claimed me, but I escaped through a passage the castle revealed." "And what of Potter's device? The detector you spoke of?" A hesitation. "Lost in the fire, my lord. But I can recreate it with your guidance." The boy's work was promising but flawed. Harry and Hermione exchanged glances. So Crouch had survived and was now reporting their detector destroyed. That could work to their advantage, Voldemort wouldn't be expecting it. "We're running out of time," Harry whispered. "Dumbledore will be here soon, and that could either help us or complicate things." "One shot," Hermione agreed, her expression resolute. "Make it count." They quickly refined their plan. Harry would enter openly, surrendering his wand to maintain the illusion of defeat while keeping the destroyed diadem concealed. Once he had Voldemort's attention with revelations about the destroyed Horcruxes, Hermione would maneuver the detector into position under the invisibility cloak and trigger the venom delivery at maximum power. It was desperate, dangerous, and quite possibly suicidal. But as Harry clutched the damaged detector, he felt a surge of fierce determination. This machine, born from an accidental discovery and built through months of painstaking work, represented more than just technological innovation. It represented his refusal to be merely a victim or a pawn in Voldemort's games. For once, he had created the weapon, set the trap, chosen the battlefield. "Ready?" he asked Hermione, who nodded despite her obvious fear. "Harry," she said, squeezing his hand briefly. "Just, come back." Harry managed a tight smile. "Planning to." With that, he handed her the invisibility cloak and detector, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door to face his destiny. The great hall fell silent as Harry stepped through the side door, every Death Eater turning to stare in surprise. Voldemort himself seemed momentarily startled before his snake-like features twisted into a triumphant smile. "Harry Potter," he hissed, red eyes gleaming. "How convenient of you to deliver yourself to me. I had expected to hunt you through the castle." Harry walked steadily forward, stopping several meters from the Dark Lord. His heart hammered painfully against his ribs, but he kept his expression neutral, almost bored. "Hello, Tom. New body?" The last one was pretty pathetic. Anger flashed across Voldemort's face at the casual use of his birth name. Behind him, several Death Eaters stirred restlessly, clearly expecting their master to strike Harry down immediately for his insolence. Still defiant, Voldemort observed, regaining his composure. "Even when faced with certain death." "About that," Harry said, reaching slowly into his pocket. Several wands immediately trained on him, but he merely withdrew the blackened, twisted remains of Ravenclaw's diadem. "I thought you might want this back. Though it's not quite how you left it." Voldemort's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he recognized the destroyed Horcrux. For a moment, genuine shock registered on his serpentine features before being quickly masked. "A trinket," he dismissed, though his voice had gained an edge. "Nothing more." "Really?" Harry countered, setting the diadem on the floor between them. "Just like Slytherin's locket was nothing. Or your diary." This time, Voldemort couldn't hide his reaction. Fury and disbelief contorted his features as he realized the implications of Harry's words. "Impossible," he whispered, more to himself than to Harry. "No one knows, no one could know." "Horcruxes," Harry said clearly, the forbidden word echoing in the silent hall. Behind Voldemort, several Death Eaters shifted uncomfortably, clearly unfamiliar with the term. "Pieces of your soul hidden in objects. That was your big secret, wasn't it, Tom? Your path to immortality." Out of the corner of his eye, Harry spotted a slight shimmer near the wall, Hermione moving into position with the cloak detector. He needed to keep Voldemort's attention fixed firmly on him. "3 down," Harry continued boldly. "How many more before you're just a man again, Tom? A half-blood like me, mortal and afraid?" "Crucio!" Voldemort screamed, his composure shattering completely. The curse struck Harry like 1,000 white-hot knives, sending him crashing to the floor in agony. He bit through his lip rather than scream, tasting blood as the torture curse set every nerve ending on fire. After what seemed an eternity but was likely only seconds, Voldemort lifted the curse. Harry lay panting on the cold stone floor, muscles twitching from the aftereffects. "You know nothing," Voldemort snarled, looming over him. "Nothing of the measures I have taken, the protections I have enacted. Your small victories mean nothing in the face of Lord Voldemort's power." Harry pushed himself up on trembling arms, blood dripping from his bitten lip. "I know enough," he managed, his voice ragged but defiant. "I know how to find them. I know how to destroy them. And I've only just started." From his position on the floor, Harry could see Hermione had reached an optimal location behind Voldemort. The detector was partially visible as she prepared it for activation. He needed to keep Voldemort's focus just a little longer. "Your servant Crouch was quite helpful," Harry added, struggling to his feet. "Told us everything we needed to know about soul magic. Even helped us build our little Horcrux hunting device." Voldemort's gaze snapped to Barty Crouch Jr., who had gone deathly pale. "My lord, I never," the boy lies, silence. Voldemort hissed before returning his attention to Harry. Whatever primitive tool you created has been destroyed, Potter. Barty has informed me of the fire. Did he? Harry said with a bloodied smile. Funny thing about that fire. It destroyed a lot, but not everything. At that moment, Hermione fully removed the cloak from the detector, which now sat on the floor just meters behind Voldemort. Its display glowed ominously, the targeting system locked directly on the Dark Lord's back. Now! Harry shouted. Hermione slammed her hand down on the activation sequence just as Voldemort began to turn. The detector hummed to life, its remaining components straining under the emergency overload Harry had designed as a last resort. A concentrated jet of basilisk venom, propelled by both mechanical pressure and magical force, erupted from the device at the exact moment its disruption field reached maximum intensity. The combination, designed to penetrate the magical defenses of a Horcrux, struck Voldemort squarely between the shoulder blades. Voldemort's scream was inhuman, a high, piercing wail that shattered the enchanted ceiling above, raining debris down upon the assembled Death Eaters. The basilisk venom, deadly to any mortal and apparently excruciating even to a Horcrux-protected Dark Lord, spread visibly through his pale skin like black poison in his veins. Master! Bellatrix shrieked, rushing forward only to be blasted back by the magical energy now emanating from Voldemort's writhing form. Harry dove for cover behind an overturned table as chaos erupted in the Great Hall. Death Eaters fired spells wildly, some at Harry, others at the detector, while Voldemort continued to howl in agony, his body contorting unnaturally. The cloak! Harry shouted to Hermione, who had taken cover behind a pillar. She tossed it to him across the intervening space, and he barely caught it before a blasting curse obliterated the spot where he'd been standing. My lord! Crouch was screaming, trying unsuccessfully to approach his master. What has he done to you? Through the pandemonium, Harry crawled toward Hermione's position, the invisibility cloak clutched in his hand. But before he could reach her, the great hall doors burst open with a thunderous crash. Albus Dumbledore stood framed in the doorway, his power radiating from him like heat from a furnace. Gone was the eccentric headmaster, in his place stood the only wizard Voldemort had ever feared, his eyes blazing with cold fire. Tom, Dumbledore said, his voice carrying effortlessly above the chaos. This ends now. Voldemort, still struggling with the basilisk venom spreading through his system, managed to straighten partially. His red eyes burned with hatred as he faced his old teacher. This changes nothing, he gasped, black venom visible at the corners of his mouth. I cannot die, Dumbledore. You know this. Perhaps not today, Dumbledore acknowledged, advancing into the hall with his wand held casually but unmistakably ready. But neither will you leave this castle with your forces intact. Behind Dumbledore, members of the Order of the Phoenix poured into the Great Hall, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, Kingsley Shacklebolt and others Harry didn't recognize. They engaged the Death Eaters immediately, spells flying in every direction. Using the distraction, Harry finally reached Hermione's position. The cloak, he gasped, throwing it over both of them. We need to get out of here. The detector, Hermione protested, looking toward where the device still sat, now damaged beyond repair from multiple curses. Leave it, Harry insisted. It's done its job. Dumbledore's here now. As they edged toward the exit, still under the cloak, Harry caught glimpses of the battle raging around them. Dumbledore and Voldemort had not directly engaged, instead, the headmaster seemed focused on containing the Death Eaters while Voldemort, clearly weakened but still terrifyingly powerful, prepared for retreat. This is not over, Potter. Voldemort's voice cut through the din, somehow finding Harry despite the invisibility cloak. Your device has wounded me, but I will recover. And when I do, I will ensure you suffer beyond imagination before you die. A massive explosion rocked the far wall of the Great Hall, creating an escape route. Voldemort, supported by Bellatrix and Crouch, moved toward the breach while other Death Eaters covered their retreat. "Let them go, Harry," Dumbledore's voice said directly beside them, making both Harry and Hermione jump despite the cloak's concealment. "This battle is won. The war continues." Harry wanted to protest, to chase after the retreating Dark Lord, but exhaustion suddenly overwhelmed him. The aftermath of the Cruciatus curse combined with the emotional and physical strain of the night's events left him barely able to stand. As the last Death Eaters disappeared through the breach in the wall, Dumbledore waved his wand in a complex pattern, sealing the castle's defenses once more. Only then did Harry and Hermione remove the invisibility cloak. "Professor," Harry began, but Dumbledore raised a hand to silence him. "Not here," the headmaster said gently but firmly. "There is much to discuss, but first, we must attend to the wounded and secure the castle." Harry nodded numbly, his gaze drawn to the staff table where Cedric's body still lay among other victims of Voldemort's resurrection ritual. The sight hardened something inside him, a resolve that transcended his exhaustion. "The detector," he said, pointing to the destroyed device. "We can rebuild it. Better. Stronger. And we know where to look for the other Horcruxes now." Dumbledore's eyes widened slightly before a small, sad smile touched his lips. "Yes, Harry. I believe you can and will. But for now, let us focus on the living." As Order members secured the Great Hall and tended to the injured, Harry found himself standing over the destroyed remains of his creation. The technological Horcrux hunter, born from an accidental discovery and developed through months of secret work, had performed its final function. Not by destroying a Horcrux as intended, but by wounding Voldemort himself in a way the Dark Lord never anticipated. Muggle technology, so often dismissed by the wizarding world, had proven its worth in the most dramatic way possible. And Harry, the boy raised in both worlds but belonging fully to neither, had found his unique strength in bridging that divide. "We'll build another," Hermione said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "We know how now." Harry nodded, picking up a single undamaged component from the wreckage, the modified calculator display that had first shown him the magical signatures of the Marauders' map nearly a year ago. Such a small thing to have started such a momentous chain of events. "Next time," he said, pocketing the component, "we build it together with Dumbledore's help. No more secrets." As dawn broke over Hogwarts, illuminating the damaged but standing castle through the enchanted ceiling, Harry felt a strange mixture of grief and hope. Cedric and others had died, Voldemort had returned, and the war had begun in earnest, yet something fundamental had changed. For the first time since that Halloween night when his parents were murdered, Harry felt he had truly struck back at Voldemort on his own terms. Not through luck or sacrifice or ancient protective magic, but through his own innovation and determination. The accidental discovery that Muggle technology could detect Horcruxes had led to a machine that changed the course of the war before it truly began. And Harry, no longer just a prophesied victim or unwilling champion, had found his path forward. Voldemort may have escaped, but he had not escaped unscathed. And next time, Harry would be ready with more than just a hastily modified Walkman and desperate courage. Next time, he would have a plan, allies who understood the full picture, and technology specifically designed to end the Dark Lord once and for all. As Dumbledore approached, his expression grave but determined, Harry straightened his shoulders. The third task of the Triwizard Tournament would never happen now, but a greater challenge lay ahead, one that would draw on every skill, every resource, and every connection from both the Muggle and magical worlds. "I believe, Harry," Dumbledore said softly, "that it is time we had a very long conversation about Horcruxes, technology, and your remarkable achievements this year." Harry nodded, feeling the weight and promise of those words. "Yes, Professor. I think it is." The technological Horcrux hunter had performed its first and final mission. But its legacy was just beginning. Chapter 4, The Improved Detector. Harry sat in Dumbledore's office, surrounded by silver instruments that whirred and puffed with mysterious purpose. His hands still trembled slightly from the aftereffects of Voldemort's Cruciatus curse. Across from him, Dumbledore studied the blackened remains of Ravenclaw's diadem with intense fascination. "Extraordinary," Dumbledore murmured, turning the destroyed Horcrux over in his long fingers. And you say your device delivered basilisk venom directly into it while simultaneously disrupting its magical protections? Yes, sir. Harry shifted in his chair, painfully aware of the others present in the room. Sirius stood protectively behind Harry's chair, a hand resting on his godson's shoulder. Professor McGonagall and the real Alastair Moody, recently rescued from the trunk where his impostor had kept him imprisoned all year, watched from near the door. 3 Horcruxes destroyed, Dumbledore continued, setting the diadem aside. Tom's Diary by Basilisk Fong in your second year, though we didn't recognize its true nature then. And now Slytherin's locket and Ravenclaw's diadem through your remarkable invention. We think there are 4 more pieces of his soul, Hermione added from her chair beside Harry. Ron stood behind her, unusually quiet after the night's horrors. 1 in Voldemort himself, leaving 3 Horcruxes still hidden. Sirius squeezed Harry's shoulder. I still can't believe you built a machine that can detect dark magic. James would have been. His voice caught. Well, impressed doesn't begin to cover it. Reckless, McGonagall interjected sharply, though her eyes betrayed her pride. Brilliant but reckless. You could have been killed 20 different ways. Nearly was, Harry replied, unconsciously rubbing his scar. But now Voldemort knows we're hunting his Horcruxes. He'll move the remaining ones, protect them better. Dumbledore nodded gravely. Indeed. Which is why we must act quickly. The basilisk venom has weakened him considerably, my sources indicate he's retreated to recover, which gives us a narrow window of opportunity. Sir, Harry leaned forward, wincing at the pain the movement caused, the detector was destroyed in the Great Hall. But we can rebuild it. Better this time, with proper resources. And what exactly would you need for this improved detector, Mr. Potter? The real Moody asked, his magical eye fixed intently on Harry. Unlike his imposters, this eye moved with less manic energy and more controlled purpose. Harry exchanged glances with Hermione and Ron. A lot, actually. High-quality electronic components, specialized magical items, access to certain restricted books. And basilisk venom, Hermione added. We used almost our entire supply on the diadem and Voldemort. Dumbledore rose from behind his desk and walked to Fawkes's perch, stroking the phoenix's brilliant plumage. I believe all that can be arranged. However, I must insist that this time, your work be conducted under proper supervision. Harry bristled slightly. Sir, with respect, we've proven we can handle, it's not a question of capability, Harry, Dumbledore interrupted gently. You and your friends have demonstrated remarkable skill and ingenuity. But now that Voldemort knows what you're doing, the danger has increased exponentially. Sirius nodded in agreement. He'll be coming after you specifically, Harry. Not just because of the prophecy anymore, but because you've actually hurt him. Damaged his Horcruxes. That makes it personal. It's been personal since he killed my parents, Harry said flatly. A heavy silence fell over the room. Fawkes trilled softly, the phoenix song somehow both comforting and strengthening. I propose a compromise, Dumbledore finally said. You will continue your work on the improved detector, but at a secure location rather than Hogwarts. With the assistance of certain trusted individuals who possess expertise that might prove valuable. What location? Ron asked, speaking up for the first time. Dumbledore turned to Sirius. I believe your family home would serve admirably, wouldn't you agree? Sirius's face darkened momentarily before he nodded. Grimmauld Place. It's under the Fidelius charm already, and has certain resources that might help. Dark artifacts. Harry guessed. The noble and most ancient House of Black wasn't exactly known for its wholesome magical practices, Sirius confirmed with a grimace. The library alone contains books that would give Madame Pants a heart attack. Then it's settled, Dumbledore said, returning to his desk. Once the immediate crisis at Hogwarts is contained, you will relocate to Grimmauld Place to continue your work. The Order of the Phoenix will provide protection and assistance. And the remaining Horcruxes? Hermione asked. Do you have any idea what they might be, Professor? Dumbledore's expression grew thoughtful. Based on the pattern you've discovered, the diary, the locket, the diadem, I believe we should look for items of similar significance. The diary was personal to Tom. The locket and diadem belonged to Hogwarts founders. Hufflepuff's cup, Harry said immediately, remembering their earlier theory. That would complete the set of founders' items, except for Gryffindor's sword. Precisely, Dumbledore agreed. And I have reason to believe Tom acquired the cup before his first downfall. As for the others. He hesitated, his eyes briefly flicking to Harry's scar before continuing, I have theories, but would prefer not to speculate until we have more concrete evidence. Harry caught the glance but chose not to press the issue. The implication of the Horcrux fragment's words in the chamber, about Harry possibly containing a piece of Voldemort himself, still haunted him. How soon can we leave for Sirius's place, he asked instead. Tonight, Dumbledore replied. The Ministry is in disarray after the events in the Great Hall. Minister Fudge is still attempting to deny Voldemort's return despite the testimony of numerous witnesses. Bloody fool, Moody growled. We've got dead students and Death Eaters captured in the act, and he's still playing politics. Which makes our work all the more urgent, Dumbledore continued. Harry, you and your friends should pack only essentials. Professor McGonagall will arrange your discreet departure from the castle. As the meeting concluded, Harry felt a strange mixture of emotions, grief for Cedric and the other victims, determination to continue hunting Horcruxes, and an unexpected sense of relief that they would no longer be working in secret. Harry, Dumbledore called as they prepared to leave. A moment, please. The others filed out, leaving Harry alone with the headmaster. Dumbledore studied him over his half-moon spectacles, his expression unreadable. I owe you an apology, Dumbledore said quietly. Harry blinked in surprise. For what, sir? For underestimating you. For keeping information from you that might have helped you prepare for what was to come. Dumbledore sighed heavily. I believed I was protecting you by shielding you from certain truths. Instead, I may have placed you in greater danger. You mean about the Horcruxes? Dumbledore nodded. Among other things. I've known about Tom's Horcruxes for some time, though not their exact nature or number. I've been hunting them quietly, believing the burden should be mine alone. And now? Harry asked, sensing a shift in the headmaster's approach. Now I recognize that isolation serves none of us well. Your innovation, combining Muggle technology with magical principles, represents an approach I would never have considered. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. Sometimes the oldest wizards become the most set in their ways. Harry wasn't quite ready to forgive years of secrets and half-truths, but he recognized the significance of Dumbledore's admission. So we'll work together from now on. As equals in the most important respects, yes. Dumbledore rose and came around his desk to stand beside Harry. Though I retain certain advantages of experience and knowledge that I will share with you as we proceed. Including what you suspect about the other Horcruxes. Dumbledore hesitated just long enough for Harry to notice. Yes, Harry. Including that. As Harry left the office to join his friends, he felt the weight of the destroyed diadem in his pocket, a physical reminder of what they'd accomplished. 3 Horcruxes down, 3 to go, plus Voldemort himself. The path ahead was dangerous and uncertain, but for the first time, Harry felt they had a fighting chance. And with an improved detector on the horizon, Voldemort's remaining soul fragments wouldn't stay hidden for long. Absolutely not. Molly Weasley's voice carried throughout the grim hallways of number 12, Grimmauld Place. They are children. They should not be involved in building weapons or hunting dark artifacts. Harry paused on the landing, Ron and Hermione beside him. They'd arrived at Sirius's ancestral home late the previous night and had spent the morning exploring its dusty, forbidding rooms. The house itself seemed to resist their presence, from the troll-leg umbrella stand that tried to trip anyone passing by to the mounted house elf heads that tracked them with glassy eyes. Now, it seemed, the Order of the Phoenix was having its first meeting about the detector project, as they'd begun calling it. "They're already involved, Molly," Sirius's voice replied firmly. "They built the original detector without any adult help. They found and destroyed 2 Horcruxes on their own. And nearly got themselves killed." Mrs. Weasley shot back. Harry exchanged glances with his friends. They'd expected resistance but had hoped their proven track record would count for something. "Perhaps we should go down," Hermione whispered. "Make our case directly." Ron looked less certain. "Mum in full protective mode? Rather face another dragon, honestly." "This isn't about what we want," Harry said quietly. "It's about what needs to be done. Voldemort's wounded but recovering. We need that improved detector built as quickly as possible." With determined steps, they descended to the basement kitchen where the Order meeting was taking place. Conversation halted as they entered, a dozen pairs of eyes turning toward them. "You shouldn't be here," Mrs. Weasley said immediately, rising from her seat. "This is an Order meeting." "We're discussing the detector that Harry built," Sirius countered before Harry could respond. "Seems only right they should be part of the conversation." "I agree," said a calm voice. Remus Lupin smiled warmly at Harry from his seat beside Sirius. "After all, without their innovation, we wouldn't have this unprecedented advantage against Voldemort." Harry surveyed the room, noting who was present: Sirius and Lupin, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, Moody, Tonks, Kingsley Shacklebolt, and several people he didn't recognize. Dumbledore was noticeably absent. "Where's Professor Dumbledore?" Hermione asked, apparently thinking the same. "Dealing with the Ministry," Kingsley replied in his deep, reassuring voice. "Fudge is still resisting the truth, despite the attack on Hogwarts. Dumbledore's trying to prepare our defenses without Ministry support." Harry nodded and stepped forward. "We understand your concerns, Mrs. Weasley. But this isn't a choice for us anymore. Voldemort knows what we've built and what we're hunting. He'll be coming after us whether we continue working on the detector or not. All the more reason to keep you safely hidden," Mrs. Weasley insisted, though with less force than before. "No," Harry shook his head firmly. "All the more reason to finish what we started. The detector works. It found and destroyed Horcruxes that even Dumbledore had trouble locating. With an improved version and proper support, we could end this war before it really begins." Moody's magical eye fixed on Harry with approval. "The boy's right, Molly. Offensive action now could save countless lives later. And it's not like we're suggesting they fight Death Eaters," Tonks added, her hair shifting from purple to a thoughtful blue. "Building the detector is technical work, not frontline combat." Mrs. Weasley still looked unconvinced, but Mr. Weasley placed a gentle hand on her arm. "They've earned the right to help, Molly. And we'll be here to support them every step of the way." After another moment of internal struggle, Mrs. Weasley relented with a sigh. "Fine. But there will be rules. Safety protocols. And adults present at all times during testing." "Agreed," Harry said immediately, relief flooding through him. Sirius grinned and conjured 3 more chairs at the table. "Now that's settled, let's get down to business. Harry, why don't you explain what you'll need for this improved detector?" For the next hour, Harry, Ron, and Hermione outlined their requirements. Hermione had prepared extensive notes on the components they'd need, both magical and Muggle. Ron, who had proven surprisingly adept at the practical aspects of construction, described the workspace requirements. Harry focused on the detection and destruction mechanisms, explaining how they could be enhanced with proper resources. The original detector had 3 main limitations, Harry explained, sketching on a piece of parchment. First, range. It could only detect Horcruxes within about 50 meters. Second, specificity. It sometimes gave false positives from other dark objects. And third, power. we had limited basilisk venom and the delivery system was crude. And your proposed improvements? Kingsley asked, leaning forward with interest. Range enhancement through specialized rune sequences, Hermione answered. We've been researching amplification methods that could extend detection to several kilometers. Better filtering systems to distinguish Horcruxes from other dark magic, Ron added. Using comparison samples from the Horcruxes we've already destroyed. And a more sophisticated venom delivery system, Harry finished. Plus backup destruction methods, like concentrated fiend fire contained in a magically reinforced chamber. Moody nodded approvingly. Multiple attack vectors. Smart thinking. There's something else, Harry said, hesitating slightly. Something we discovered accidentally with the first detector. He glanced at Hermione and Ron, who nodded encouragingly. It can detect magical signatures at a distance, not just dark magic. We could potentially modify it to track specific wizards by their magical trace. A murmur ran through the Order members. The strategic implications were immediately obvious. You're talking about a way to find Death Eaters even when they're hiding, Kingsley said slowly. Or to locate Voldemort himself. Potentially, yes, Harry confirmed. Though it would require a sample of their magic to calibrate properly. Which we have for Voldemort, Lupin noted. From the residue left at Hogwarts during the attack. Sirius clapped his hands decisively. Right then. Acquisition of components starts immediately. Moody, Tonks, you'll handle the magical items. Arthur, can you source the Muggle electronics? Mr. Weasley's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Absolutely. I have contacts in London who can help with specialized equipment. We'll need a proper workspace too, Hermione pointed out. Somewhere isolated enough that magical discharges won't damage the rest of the house. The old ballroom on the top floor, Sirius suggested. It's magically reinforced for dueling practice, and large enough for a full laboratory setup. As the meeting continued, plans taking shape around them, Harry felt a surge of cautious optimism. The Order's resources and experience combined with their technological innovation created possibilities that neither could achieve alone. For the first time, they weren't just reacting to Voldemort, they were setting the terms of engagement. The war had begun in the worst possible way, with deaths at Hogwarts and Voldemort's return. But they had wounded him, exposed his secret, and now stood poised to strike at the very foundation of his power. If they could destroy the remaining Horcruxes before he recovered fully. Harry touched his pocket where the single surviving component from the original detector lay, the modified calculator display that had started everything. Soon it would be part of something far more powerful. The ballroom transformation happened faster than Harry had expected. Within 3 days, the once elegant space had been converted into a high-tech workshop that would have made any Muggle engineer envious while simultaneously baffling them completely. 3 large workbenches dominated the center of the room, each dedicated to a different aspect of the detector's construction. The first held Muggle electronics, circuit boards, displays, sensors, and a compact power system that Mr. Weasley had procured through his contacts. The second featured magical components, crystals, rune-inscribed metal plates, essence vials, and a sealed container of basilisk venom retrieved from the Chamber of Secrets under Dumbledore's supervision. The third bench was dedicated to integration, the critical junction where magical and technological systems would merge. Around the perimeter, specialized equipment hummed and pulsed. A modified vanishing cabinet served as a testing chamber for destruction sequences, magically reinforced to contain even the most violent reactions. A series of enchanted maps covered one wall, ready to be linked to the detector's positioning system. Shelves of reference books, many from the Black family library, lined another wall, their dangerous knowledge now purposed for something constructive. It's brilliant, Ron said as they surveyed their new workspace. Makes our old chamber setup look like a kid's chemistry set. Harry nodded in agreement. With this, we might actually finish the improved detector within weeks instead of months. Hermione was already at the magical components bench, cataloging their supplies. The runestone array from Bill is especially impressive. Curse-breaking techniques adapted for detection rather than disarmament. The door opened, admitting Lupin and a tall, thin wizard Harry didn't recognize. The stranger wore simple gray robes and carried an odd-looking case made of what appeared to be brushed aluminum, distinctly Muggle in design. Harry, Ron, Hermione, Lupin greeted them. "Allow me to introduce Broderick Bode. He works in the Department of Mysteries and has agreed to consult on your project." Unofficially, of course, Bode added in a soft, precise voice. "The Ministry remains unconvinced of recent developments. Mr. Bode specializes in the interaction between magical energies and physical matter," Lupin explained. "His expertise may help with the integration challenges you mentioned." Hermione's eyes widened with recognition. "You wrote Metaphysical Interfaces in Post-Newtonian Space. Your theories on magical field propagation are fascinating." Bode's severe expression softened slightly. "You've read my work. Impressive for someone your age." "Hermione reads everything," Ron said with a mixture of pride and exasperation. "I've brought something that might interest you," Bode said, placing his case on the center workbench and opening it carefully. Inside lay what appeared to be a glass cube about the size of Harry's fist. Within the cube, swirls of golden light moved in complex, ever-changing patterns. As they watched, the light briefly formed recognizable shapes, a tree, a bird, a human hand, before dissolving back into abstract swirls. "A visualization matrix," Bode explained. "It renders magical energy visible and tangible. We use them in the department to study magic at its fundamental level." Harry leaned closer, fascinated. "And this could help with the detector?" "More than help," Bode replied. "It could revolutionize your approach. Your original device detected magical signatures through crude electromagnetic interaction. This matrix allows direct interface with the magical energy itself." Cutting out the translation step entirely, Hermione breathed, understanding immediately. "That would improve accuracy and reduce power requirements significantly." Bode nodded approvingly. "Precisely. I've studied the schematics of your original detector. Impressive innovation, but fundamentally limited by its indirect sensing methods. With this matrix as the core component, your detection range and specificity would improve exponentially." For the next several hours, they worked with Bode to incorporate the visualization matrix into their design. The Unspeakable's expertise bridged gaps in their understanding, providing solutions to problems that had stymied them previously. By evening, they had a working prototype of the detection core, the heart of the improved device. Test activation in 3, 2, 1. Harry initiated the sequence. The matrix glowed softly within its new housing, golden light pulsing in rhythmic patterns. Around it, both magical and electronic components responded in perfect synchronization. On the connected display, data flowed in orderly streams, magical signatures categorized and analyzed with precision that the original detector could never have achieved. "It works," Hermione said, checking the readings. "And look at the sensitivity. It's detecting ambient magic throughout the entire house." Ron pointed to a particularly strong reading on the display. "What's that signature? It's different from the others." Bode studied the pattern with narrowed eyes. "Interesting. It appears to be a concentrated dark magic source." "Within this house," you said. Harry felt a sudden chill. "Another Horcrux. Here." "Impossible to determine without further calibration," Bode replied cautiously. "But the signature bears similarities to your reference data from the destroyed Horcruxes." Lupin, who had been observing quietly, straightened with alarm. "We need to inform Sirius immediately. If a Horcrux has been hiding in this house all along." Harry was already adjusting the detector's controls, trying to pinpoint the location. "It's coming from the drawing room?" "No, just outside it. In the hallway." Without waiting for the others, Harry rushed from the ballroom, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The others followed close behind, wands drawn. When they reached the first-floor landing, Harry paused, holding up the prototype detector core like a divining rod. "There," he said, pointing to a glass-fronted cabinet filled with black family heirlooms. "Something in that cabinet." Sirius appeared from the drawing room, alerted by the commotion. "What's going on?" "Possible Horcrux detection," Lupin explained quickly. The new prototype picked up a signature similar to the others. Sirius's face darkened as he approached the cabinet. "This bloody house is full of dark artifacts. Could be anything." "No," Harry said firmly, watching the detector's readings. "This is different. It matches the pattern exactly." With newfound caution, they began examining the cabinet's contents. Ancient jewelry, cursed snuff boxes, preserved creature parts in jars, the Black family collection was as disturbing as it was extensive. Nothing immediately stood out as a potential Horcrux. Then Hermione gasped, pointing to a heavy gold locket pushed into a back corner. "That symbol, it's the same as on Slytherin's locket." Indeed, an ornate S was just visible on the tarnished surface of the locket. But that made no sense, they'd already destroyed Slytherin's locket in the chamber. "Another fake?" Ron suggested, remembering the locket they'd found. Harry shook his head, studying the detector's readings. "No, this is genuine. The signature is consistent with a Horcrux." Sirius carefully opened the cabinet and levitated the locket out, letting it hang suspended in the air. "I remember this. No one could open it. My brother Regulus brought it home shortly before he disappeared." "Regulus?" Harry turned to Sirius with surprise. "Your Death Eater brother?" A pained expression crossed Sirius's face. "He joined young, but there were rumors he tried to back out. That he turned against Voldemort somehow." Lupin studied the locket with growing excitement. "What if this isn't another Horcrux, but the same one? What if Regulus somehow acquired the real locket and replaced it with a fake? And the fake is what we found in the chamber," Hermione continued the thought. "Planted there by Crouch to mislead us." Harry felt a surge of both frustration and relief. "So we haven't destroyed Slytherin's locket at all. The real one's been here the whole time. But why couldn't we detect it before?" Ron asked. "We've been here nearly a week. The house's own dark magic probably masked it," Bode suggested. "Your original detector wouldn't have been sensitive enough to distinguish it from the background magical noise." Sirius was still staring at the locket, a complex emotion playing across his features. If Regulus stole this from Voldemort, then he died defying the Dark Lord, not serving him, Harry finished quietly. A small, twisted house elf appeared with a crack, drawn by the commotion. Upon seeing the locket suspended in the air, Creature's bloodshot eyes widened with shock and recognition. "Master Regulus's locket," he croaked, shuffling forward. "What is being done with it?" Sirius turned to the house elf with uncharacteristic gentleness. "Creature, do you know about this locket? About why Regulus had it?" The house elf wrung his gnarled hands, clearly distressed. "Master Regulus ordered Creature never to tell the family what happened. Never to tell how Master Regulus died. Creature," Harry said, kneeling to the elf's level, "we're trying to finish what Regulus started. To destroy this locket properly, the way he wanted." Something in Harry's words seemed to reach the old elf. After a moment of internal struggle, Creature began to speak, haltingly at first, then with increasing urgency. He told them of Voldemort's cave, of the potion that had to be drunk, of Regulus sacrificing himself to retrieve the Horcrux and ordering Creature to destroy it. But Creature tried everything. Nothing worked on the locket. Nothing. The elf dissolved into sobs. Creature failed Master Regulus's final order. Sirius stood stunned by the revelation about his brother's heroic end, while Harry exchanged determined glances with his friends. "You haven't failed, Creature," Harry said firmly. "We can destroy it now. We have the means." "The destruction component isn't ready yet," Hermione cautioned. The prototype is functional enough for a controlled test, Bode countered. With proper containment measures. Harry nodded decisively. We'll take it to the testing chamber in the ballroom. Complete the destruction sequence there. As they carefully transported the real Slytherin's locket to the ballroom, Harry felt a growing sense of purpose. The improved detector had already proven its worth by finding a Horcrux they hadn't even known existed in their midst. And Regulus' black sacrifice, a story they would never have discovered otherwise, added fuel to their determination. Within the specially reinforced testing chamber, they prepared the destruction sequence. The prototype wasn't as elegant as their final design would be, but its core functions were operational. Basilisk venom loaded, disruption field calibrated, containment measures active. Everyone clear? Harry asked, hand poised over the activation control. His friends nodded, while Sirius and Creature watched intently from a safe distance. The house elf's eyes were fixed on the locket with a mixture of hatred and hope. Initiating destruction sequence, Harry announced, pressing the control. The process was more controlled than their previous attempts. The visualization matrix glowed intensely as it mapped the Horcruxes' magical protections, identifying weaknesses. Precisely targeted disruption fields opened a momentary gap in those defenses, allowing the basilisk venom to strike with surgical precision. The locket shuddered violently, then split open with a sound like a scream. Black smoke poured out, briefly forming a face, Voldemort's handsome, human face from decades earlier, before the venom did its work. The smoke dissipated, the locket blackened and twisted, and the detector's readings confirmed complete destruction. Creature fell to his knees, tears streaming down his wrinkled face. Master Regulus's order, finally completed. Sirius placed a hand on the elf's shoulder, his own expression showing a complicated grief. Thank you, Creature. For preserving my brother's true legacy. Harry stared at the destroyed Horcrux, mentally recalculating their progress. The diary, the diadem, and now the real locket, 3 genuine Horcruxes destroyed. That leaves Hufflepuff's cup and 2 unknowns, he said to his friends. Plus Voldemort himself. And now we have proof the improved detector works, Hermione added, examining the readings from the destruction sequence. Better than we could have hoped. We need to accelerate production, Harry decided. Full integration of all systems, final calibration, field testing. How quickly can we be operational? With Bode's help and the resources we now have. Hermione considered. 2 weeks for a field-ready unit. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to build a weapon that could track the remaining fragments of Voldemort's soul. 2 weeks before they could take the hunt directly to him. Harry nodded, determination hardening his resolve. 2 weeks it is. Exactly 16 days later, Harry stood in the backyard of the burrow, the completed Horcrux detector Mark II held firmly in his hands. Unlike its cobbled-together predecessor, the new device looked professionally manufactured. A sleek silver case the size of a small briefcase, with a high-resolution display screen and carefully labeled controls. Around him, a select team had assembled for the first field deployment, Ron and Hermione, naturally, Bill Weasley, whose curse-breaking expertise had proven invaluable, Tonks and Kingsley, providing security, and Dumbledore himself, who had finally managed to extract himself from ministry matters long enough to participate. Remember, Harry addressed the group, this first mission is reconnaissance only. We track and confirm the location of Hufflepuff's cup, but we don't attempt retrieval or destruction until we have a complete tactical plan. Dumbledore nodded approvingly. Wise precaution, Harry. Though I confess, I'm still amazed by what you and your friends have accomplished. He gestured to the detector. This device represents a genuine revolution in magical technology. It nearly killed us several times during testing, Ron added cheerfully. The Fiendfire containment system had a few hiccups. By hiccups, he means it melted half the laboratory, Hermione clarified with an exasperated glance at Ron. Fortunately, we'd fireproofed everything after our experiences with the prototype. Harry activated the detector, its startup sequence initiating with a soft hum. The visualization matrix at its core glowed golden through the reinforced viewport, while the display showed the system's status, all components functional, all calibrations optimal. Based on our intelligence from both Dumbledore's research and Creature's information about Voldemort's habits, we believe Hufflepuff's cup is hidden in the Lestrange vault at Gringotts, Harry explained, adjusting the controls to focus on that specific Horcrux signature. This scan will confirm that theory. Without needing to break into the most secure building in Britain, Bill added. Which, as a Gringotts employee, I very much appreciate. Harry initiated the long-range scan. The detector's range had been extended to several kilometers, sufficient to reach Gringotts from their current location on the outskirts of London. The display showed the scan progressing, magical signatures being identified and categorized in real time. There, Hermione said suddenly, pointing to a strong reading on the display. That's it. The same signature pattern as the other Horcruxes. Everyone leaned closer to examine the results. The detector had indeed identified a Horcrux-consistent signature emanating from Gringotts' general direction, though the bank's powerful protections prevented more specific localization. Confirmation achieved, Harry announced with satisfaction. Hufflepuff's cup is at Gringotts, almost certainly in the Lestrange vault as we suspected. Now comes the difficult part, Dumbledore noted. Retrieving an object from one of Gringotts' deepest vaults without triggering a war with the Goblin Nation. Bill grimaced. I've been working on that problem. There might be a legal approach. The Ministry can request an inspection of vaults belonging to convicted Death Eaters under certain circumstances. Which would require Ministry cooperation, Kingsley pointed out. Something in short supply at the moment. We'll find a way, Harry said confidently. We always do. For now, let's complete the scan for other potential Horcruxes. He adjusted the detector's settings for a broader sweep, extending its range to maximum and filtering for only the most likely Horcrux signatures. The process would take longer but might reveal previously unknown locations. As the scan progressed, conversation turned to Voldemort's recent activities, or rather, the conspicuous lack thereof. Since the battle at Hogwarts, the Dark Lord had gone completely silent. No attacks, no sightings, no Death Eater activity at all. The basilisk venom had clearly affected him severely, forcing him into hiding while he recovered. We've hurt him, Tonks said, her hair shifting to a victorious bright blue. Really hurt him. And now we're hunting his soul fragments while he's weakened. Don't underestimate Tom even when injured, Dumbledore cautioned. He is most dangerous when cornered. Harry was about to respond when the detector suddenly emitted a sharp alert tone. The display flashed with new information, another potential Horcrux signature detected, this one from an unexpected direction. That can't be right, Harry muttered, rechecking the readings. According to this, there's a Horcrux signature coming from Little Hangleton. Dumbledore straightened immediately, his casual demeanor vanishing. The Gaunt Shack. Of course. I should have realized. Gaunt? Hermione asked. As in Voldemort's maternal family? Indeed, Dumbledore confirmed. The last descendants of Slytherin himself. They lived in a dilapidated shack near Little Hangleton, the village where Tom's father came from. Harry studied the readings more carefully. The signature is similar to the others but, there's something odd about it. Like it's been there a very long time. How quickly can we mobilize to investigate? Kingsley asked, already shifting to operational planning. Harry exchanged glances with Dumbledore. The cup can wait. It's secure in Gringotts and will require extensive planning anyway. This new signature is in a remote location, potentially less protected. An opportunity to maintain our momentum, Dumbledore agreed. Though I suspect Tom would have placed significant protections around any Horcrux in his family's ancestral home. The detector can help with that, Harry explained, indicating a secondary function on the display. It can identify and analyze magical defenses before we trigger them. One of the upgrades from the original version. Quick plans were made. They would apparate to Little Hangleton that afternoon, conduct reconnaissance around the Gaunt shack, and assess the feasibility of immediate Horcrux retrieval. If conditions allowed, they would extract and destroy it on site using the detector's integrated destruction systems. As the others prepared, Harry took a moment to examine the detector's final readings from the scan. Something about the little Hangleton signature nagged at him, a subtle anomaly in its pattern that distinguished it from the other Horcruxes they'd encountered. He made a mental note to analyze it more thoroughly once they arrived at the location. 4 hours later, Harry stood at the edge of an overgrown forest, staring at what remained of the Gaunt shack. Little more than a rotting hovel now, it sat in a clearing choked with weeds and briars, projecting an aura of neglect and menace even from a distance. The detector in his hands pulsed with warning, its readings confirming both the presence of a Horcrux and multiple layers of lethal magical protections. "Nasty curses," Bill muttered, using his own curse-breaking tools to analyze the defenses. "Flesh-rotting jinxes on the perimeter, a compulsion to turn back, and something particularly vicious on the door itself. Can you disarm them?" Dumbledore asked, though his attention seemed oddly fixed on the shack itself rather than Bill's analysis. "Given time, yes," Bill replied. "But it would be easier if we knew exactly what we're looking for inside. The detector can tell us there's a Horcrux, but not what object contains it." Harry adjusted the detector's settings, trying to get a clearer reading through the magical interference. "Based on the pattern, it's small. Probably jewelry or a small artifact, consistent with the other Horcruxes." Dumbledore's expression became increasingly troubled as he gazed at the shack. Without warning, he stepped forward, raising his wand in complex patterns that none of them recognized. The air around the shack's perimeter shimmered as invisible defenses became momentarily visible, glowing red lines of malevolent magic crisscrossing the approach to the door. "I believe I know what lies within," Dumbledore said quietly. "And I fear this particular Horcrux may be uniquely dangerous." "More dangerous than the others?" Hermione asked with concern. "Perhaps." Dumbledore turned to Harry. "Does your detector show anything unusual about this Horcrux's signature? Any deviation from the established pattern?" Harry nodded slowly, relieved that Dumbledore had noticed the same anomaly that had bothered him. "Yes. There's a secondary magical signature overlaid on the Horcrux itself. Something ancient and powerful." "I suspected as much," Dumbledore sighed. "I believe Tom has used a family heirloom of particular significance, the Gaunt ring, which contains a stone of unusual properties." "What kind of properties?" Harry asked, suddenly wary. Dumbledore hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. "Legends speak of 3 objects of immense power, created centuries ago. The Deathly Hallows, as they're called in children's stories. The Gaunt ring may contain one of them, the Resurrection Stone." Ron's eyes widened. "From The Tale of the Three Brothers? That's real?" "This is hardly the time for fairy tales," Kingsley interjected impatiently. "We have a Horcrux to destroy." "On the contrary," Dumbledore replied, understanding what we face is crucial. "If I'm right, the ring contains not only a fragment of Voldemort's soul but an object of legendary power that might compel the wearer to use it, regardless of the consequences." Harry studied the detector's readings more carefully, noting how the overlapping signatures interacted. "You're saying it might have additional protections or effects beyond what we've seen with the other Horcruxes?" "Precisely," Dumbledore nodded. "Which is why we must proceed with extraordinary caution." After lengthy discussion, they developed a plan. Bill and Dumbledore would work together to dismantle the external protections, creating a safe path to the shack. Harry would then use the detector to identify and neutralize any curses on the ring itself before they attempted to destroy the Horcrux. The process was painstaking. Bill's expertise combined with Dumbledore's power gradually unraveled the web of curses surrounding the shack. Each spell required careful analysis and countering, with the detector providing real-time feedback on their progress. After nearly 2 hours of intense concentration, they finally created a narrow corridor of safety leading to the door. "The entrance is still heavily cursed," Bill warned, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. Particularly nasty work, looks like a withering curse that would spread from point of contact throughout the victim's body. Probably fatal within minutes. Dumbledore's expression darkened. As I feared. Tom knew the temptation this particular object might present and ensured anyone succumbing to it would pay dearly. With even greater care, they dismantled the curses on the door and surrounding frame. When they finally entered the shack, the detector's alarm intensified, guiding them directly to a loose floorboard beneath a rotting bed frame. "There," Harry said, pointing to the hidden compartment. "But don't touch anything yet. The ring itself is still cursed." Using the detector's analysis function, Harry carefully mapped the magical defenses surrounding the hidden object. The readings confirmed Dumbledore's theory, a powerful compulsion charm layered with a lethal curse, designed to tempt the finder into wearing the ring immediately. "I can neutralize the curse," Harry said after studying the patterns. "The detector's disruption field can create a temporary window to safely retrieve it." With Dumbledore and Bill providing additional magical containment, Harry activated the detector's protective functions. A shimmering field of energy surrounded the floorboard, isolating and temporarily suspending the curses woven into the hiding place. Using levitation rather than direct contact, Bill carefully removed the floorboard and lifted out a small box containing an ancient-looking gold ring set with a black stone. The detector's readings spiked dramatically as the Horcrux emerged, confirming both its nature and the dangerous additional enchantments layered upon it. Harry immediately transferred the ring to a specially designed containment unit within the detector itself. "Horcrux secured," he announced with relief. "Ready for destruction sequence." They retreated outside the shack to a clear area they'd prepared for the destruction process. The detector's integrated destruction system was far more sophisticated than their original version, multiple redundant methods including basilisk venom delivery, controlled fiend fire, and a magical disruption field calibrated specifically to Horcrux frequencies. "Initiating destruction sequence," Harry said, activating the final protocol. The detector hummed with power as its systems engaged in careful sequence. First, the disruption field identified and temporarily neutralized the Horcrux's defenses. Next, a precisely targeted jet of basilisk venom struck the ring at its most vulnerable point, while a controlled burst of fiend fire within the containment chamber ensured complete destruction. The black stone cracked with a sound like a thunderclap, releasing a plume of dark smoke that twisted and screamed before dissolving into nothingness. When the sequence completed, the detector confirmed successful destruction of the Horcrux signature while indicating that the stone itself, though cracked, retained some form of magic. "For down," Ron said with quiet satisfaction. "2 to go, plus you-know-who himself." Dumbledore approached the containment chamber, staring at the cracked stone with an unreadable expression. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the now harmless ring. Harry nodded, releasing the stone from the chamber. Dumbledore picked it up gingerly, turning it over in his fingers with what almost looked like longing. "Thank you, Harry," he said quietly. "You've likely saved me from a terrible mistake. I might not have been able to resist the temptation this object presents." "The resurrection stone," Hermione said softly. "It's supposed to recall the spirits of the dead." Dumbledore nodded, still staring at the cracked stone. "A dangerous power, particularly for those who have lost loved ones. The stone doesn't truly return the dead, it creates only shadows that bring more pain than comfort." He carefully wrapped the stone in a handkerchief and tucked it away. "This should be secured properly." Its power, though diminished by the damage, remained significant. As they prepared to return to Grimmauld Place, Harry felt a growing sense of momentum. 4 Horcruxes destroyed, each one weakening Voldemort further. Only Hufflepuff's cup and 1 unknown Horcrux remained, along with whatever fragment remained in Voldemort himself. The improved detector had proven its worth beyond their highest expectations. Not only had it confirmed the cup's location at Gringotts, but it had discovered the ring Horcrux and facilitated its safe destruction. With each success, Harry's confidence in their technological approach grew stronger. "We're winning," he said quietly to Ron and Hermione as they packed up their equipment. For the first time, we're actually ahead of him. Don't get overconfident, Hermione cautioned, though she was smiling too. We still have to somehow break into Gringotts for the cup. And find the last unknown Horcrux, Ron added. Harry patted the detector affectionately. With this, I think we can do both. The question is which to tackle first. They rejoined the others for the return journey, unaware that miles away, in a hidden location, Voldemort had just felt the destruction of another piece of his soul. His inhuman scream of rage and pain echoed through his hideout as he realized his enemies were systematically dismantling his carefully constructed path to immortality. The hunt continued, with time now firmly on Harry's side. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.